This is the Troll Patrol, live with Justin Freakin.
Welcome to the Troll Patrol live. Good morning. The things I do for you people, like getting up to cover these crazy ass hearings that we're gonna have for Kash, Patel, Tulsi, Gabbard, and RFK Jr. today. Torchy, good morning. If it seems like I have more energy than last night, it's true. It's damn true. I was operating on 3 hours of sleep last night. But I'd also promised my buddy that I would play video games with him last night. So Curiouser messages me at like 11:30. He's like, how are you still awake? And I messaged her back at like 12:45 like, well, Battle Opossum wanted to play video games, so I'm a man of my word. I hadn't played games with him for 2 weeks, so I felt I owed it to him. And somehow my ass made it. Didn't think I was going to be able to wake up because Smokey was laying next to me, but he was laying at my legs. I pulled him up towards me to try to get him to cuddle with me, and then he like jumped down. But Socks saw this, and he was like, how could you do that to Daddy? And Socks hops up, and like it's the closest he's ever, like it's like he was hugging me. Like I put my arm around him, and he's like laying on me like nose to nose, and we're just like laying there. Oh. Now, we reported on the plane crash. When we first got reports of the crash, it said it was a small plane. No, it did not end up being a small plane. It was a passenger jet carrying 60 people, colliding with a Black Hawk. Byronic, good morning. So I kind of, because we were getting the reports as we were on the Troll Patrol last night. I'm like, oh, it's just a small plane. That's, that's something that happens. Small plane crashes. No. A passenger jet crashing into a Black Hawk is not something that happens every day. Kash Patel currently seated. Chuck Grassley giving his long-winded opening speech here. We're going to take these confirmation hearings live. Dewey, welcome in. Why would you like Tulsi Gabbard? Tulsi would have probably been the defense secretary under a Bernie Sanders had Sanders won in 2016. 2020, I kind of doubt she would have been invited into the administration. Mr. Elwood, good morning. But a 2020 Bernie Sanders administration, Tulsi probably would have been the Secretary of Defense. Of course, she is nominated to be the Director of National Intelligence. She is going to be testifying in front of the Intelligence Committee. Okay, fair enough, Flash, but when I hear small jet, I think like, right, a small plane, I think Cessna. I think it's like an actual, small plane.
Life is too short.
Wash your ass.
To walk this earth for a crusty asshole. Wash your ass.
As I said, we have Senator Chuck Grassley currently giving his long-winded introduction.
But of course,
He is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee.
this FBI agent would find it acceptable to do what he did.
What do you mean how bad the Democrats
FBI
are?
oversight hearing of this committee.
Like, once again, that is gonna drive me fucking nuts. How bad the Democrats are? Seriously?
Just 1 hour and 20 minutes longer, but he already.
And then you're gonna tell me some bullshit that the Democrats have never done.
Later under.
You'll say some shit that I wish the Democrats were doing.
By Senator Hawley, Director Wray admitted that he.
If you think the Democrats are bad,
hearing.
I mean, they're feckless, they're ineffective, but they're not bad. They're not out here trying to fucking ruin your life the way the Republicans are. Jesus Christ, wake the fuck up.
The FBI leadership has shown to this committee and indirectly to
Democrats are so bad by,
in November,
being good for the economy.
I released internal FBI records that
Democrats cut childhood poverty in half during the Biden administration.
Those records provided data about how hundreds of FBI employees who had retired or resigned to avoid discipline.
Well, Dewey, that's probably because
Many of
you're
those
very
employees
ill-informed.
engaged in
You've been
sexual
watching right-wing media, which
misconduct
brainwashes
in the
you.
Workplace.
Right-wingers are
Those records
morons.
also showed lower-level FBI employees were punished.
Well, be sure to stick around this
Lower-level
this channel
employees
then.
of the FBI were punished more harshly.
John Andrew, good morning.
Senior level.
Sky Comet, good morning.
No, fairness was out the window.
So it wasn't even the Gaza, it was
1
in
year
the
later,
Gaza province in Mozambique. It
response
wasn't
from
Gaza
the FBI.
in Israel.
I asked Director Ray about this at a December 5, 23.
I guarantee you live in an echo chamber.
He
Echo
publicly
camper.
pledged to
Eco
get-
camper.
I
Eco
requested
champer.
November, a year before, he and his deputy.
I'm not high enough for this shit this
followed
morning.
through. I also questioned Director Ray about improperly classified information relating to Afghan evacuees placed in our country. At that time, approximately 50 evacuees were
Like
already.
idiots that think they're on the right tell me that the Republicans are the party of
So what's the number now?
anti-war, even though they've started every war in my lifetime.
I've also raised concerns about whistleblower disclosure, saying that the FBI moved agents from child sex abuse cases to those January 6 cases.
That's not even
The
true.
FBI under Director Ray never got his priorities straight.
And using child trafficking as a political
I'd like
gotcha is
a letter I
disgusting.
wrote July 20 of 2022.
If you want to see the entire government shut down, you're not a
That
smart
letter
person.
noted that Assistant Special Agent in charge
Like, who says that shit?
was a key official involved in opening the elector case that became the Jack Smith lawfare operation.
Oh, yeah, because shutting down the government is really going to help you, Dewey. Like, seriously,
That
brother.
Tebow's rank
Get your head out of your ass.
isn't supposed to open cases. That's the job of special agents. For those who don't remember, Tebow was the anti-Trump agent that violated the Hatch Act for his political conduct in office. My letter also noted that Richard Pilger, who ran the Justice Department's election crime branch, was in.
Hey, Dewey, do you want me to point out how stupid you are? You're the one that
I'd like
mentioned
to call
trans stuff.
the committee
Trans stuff doesn't concern me.
I'm going to share with you.
You were the one that brought it up,
about
you
the
absolute
FBI
fucking
that's never been
moron.
made public before. Do you have those? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. In my hand are a series of FBI emails. The first is an email that Tebow sent to subordinate agent on February the 14th, 2022. He said, quote, "Here's a draft opening language we discussed," end quote. The draft
Well, fair enough, Flash brought it
was
up.
attached, and it included material that would later become part of Jack Smith's elector case. The second email, February 24th,
That is Flash over on YouTube.
2022,
It wasn't a
email
bot.
from Tebow to John
T-Bone!
prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of
I am not high enough for this shit. Light one up,
had a
tip one
discussion
back.
with the case team, and we believe there is predication to include former President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, as a predicated subject, end quote. This FBI case would later be codenamed Arctic Frost. The third email, February 24th, 2022, email from Tebow to John Crabb, noting that the Attorney General and the FBI approval will be sought to open the case. The fourth email, February 25th, 2022, email from Tebow, subordinate agent, saying
T-Bone!
Trump and others as a criminal subject to the case.
You live in sexual
Tebow
anarchy.
responded, quote unquote, perfect. The fifth email, March 22, 2022, from Tebow. Email
Grassley is too fucking old. Shelley, good morning.
For approval. This didn't include President Trump. I want to make clear, that one didn't include President Trump as a criminal subject. The sixth email is on April 11th, 2022.
This is just him airing out his grievances
The open
about a legitimate
Arctic
investigation into
The
Trump.
seventh email is an April 13th, 2022 email from FBI agent to Tebow.
Well, Dewey, I take calls and comments live. Like, you can call in, you can Discord in.
Its opening.
I highly recommend. There's
Same date.
a video on my YouTube.
John Crabb.
It says Libertarian Gets Woke.
Case was approved. Crabb.
Go watch that.
Quote, thanks a lot. Let's talk next.
Thank you for being a freaking follower, my friend.
Between March 22nd and April 13th, other versions of the document opening the investigation existed because a ninth email shows that
Hey,
the
we're a
FBI
welcoming place. We've got liberals, we got leftists, we got right wingers.
edits on March 25th. Was Trump still removed as an investigative subject? If so, which Justice Department, FBI officials other than Jack Smith later added him for prosecution? I expect the production of all records on this matter to better understand.
This is amazing that,
fact
to me, that this is what he's taking his time to highlight in his opening statement.
Notably, approval of these documents was also given by Richard Pilger.
Once again, this is the
Has written
Senate Judiciary.
Pilger undermining the Justice Department's efforts.
Senate Judiciary Committee.
2020 election for
Kash Patel
These emails
testifying in front of the Judiciary Committee. We also have Tulsi Gabbard is in front of the Intelligence Committee. She is being nominated for Director of National Intelligence. I believe that starts at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. That one is not live yet. Sorry. I thought we had a live feed already.
and prosecution of the President of the United States. Justice Department and FBI leadership acted in concert to further a political scheme to take down Trump, just like they did with cross.
I'll try not to get distracted. We'll not talk once we get into actual questioning.
To learn a lesson.
Grassley's just grandstanding.
Learn that lesson for them, or teach that lesson. And their conduct, yet again, seriously eroded integrity of this once storied institution. As I've said before, if a politically charged investigation is to be open, it must be done the right way. And that didn't happen here. Mr. Patel, in my time, I've never seen our law enforcement intelligence community institution so badly infected with political decision making. And I say intelligence community because you know what happened when 55 people, former or present
Mazaffer
agency, signed a letter in 19.
No, I do not take requests.
That the laptop was a Russian hoax, as an example. So all of this is these institutions breaking faith with.
He is half dead. The dude's like 80.
Mr. Patel, you must be fair, you must be consistent, but you must be aggressive. Your actions must be based on accountability. And transparency brings accountability. Should you do so?
I'm sorry, I said the dude's like 80.
Remember, either you're going
I was way off.
or
The dude is 91.
And the agency certainly ended
Carla, good morning.
running Director Ray and probably people before him. Without objection, I'm going to put in this letter in the record, and this letter is September the 9th last year, calling for him and his deputy.
Love you, Mr. Elwood.
To step down, and it's titled, quote unquote, failures. Now I turn to Ranking Member Durbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your commitment to the Judiciary Committee's longstanding bipartisan
Democrat
practice
Dick
of
Durbin.
presidential nominees. A little history. The FBI dates back to the start of the last century, 1908, when then Attorney General Charles Bonaparte organized a special agent force. J. Edgar Hoover became director of the FBI in 1924 and led the Bureau for 48 years until his death in 1972. He is credited with professionalizing the Bureau and developing its investigative ability. However, with little or no oversight, Hoover also used the Bureau's investigative powers improperly.
Buzzy Samba, good
He
morning.
infamously directed the FBI to spy on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Thurgood Marshall.
I assume I'm going to be here until about 2 or 3 o'clock.
In 1975, the United States Senate created Frank Church's committee, and they disclosed widespread abuses by the FBI,
Goldfish,
and other U.S.
Dewey.
intelligence agencies.
What indication do you have that Durbin is not
Concluded
smart?
These agencies had engaged in illegal surveillance, and as a result, quote, groups and individuals have been assaulted, repressed, harassed, and disrupted because of their political views, social beliefs, and their lifestyles.
Sounds like you're not very smart.
Intelligence agencies have served the political and personal objectives of presidents and other high officials. The Hoover era of the FBI, the Watergate scandal,
Stupid?
and the findings of the Church Committee highlighted the risk of political interference in FBI investigations.
Oh, I'm not a nice
led
person.
to significant, important reforms.
You came to the wrong place.
In 1976, Congress passed a law
Hey, Justin.
that limits the
Are you
FBI director
trolling?
to a single term of 10 years, which was intended to insulate that position from political influence. And critically, we made the FBI director's appointment subject to the advice and consent of the Senate. That's why we're here today. Since 1935, the motto of the FBI has been fidelity, bravery, integrity. These qualities represent the Bureau's core values and the high standards that are expected of all of its employees, including the director of the FBI. After meeting with Mr. Patel and reviewing his record, I do not believe you meet this standard. Mr. Patel has neither the experience, the temperament, nor the judgment to lead an agency of 38,000 agencies and 400 field offices around the globe. During the time I've served on this committee, I've had the opportunity to consider 4 FBI director nominations. Each one was a Republican, and I voted for all of them. My concerns about the director of the FBI are not partisan. As much as Republicans claim that President Biden and former Attorney General Garland weaponized the FBI, let's look at the record. President Biden kept the FBI director, a lifelong Republican who had been appointed by President Trump. Contrast that with President Trump. Fired his first FBI director, James Comey, forced out his second FBI director, Chris Wray, for being insufficiently loyal. With Mr. Patel, however, obviously the president has found a loyalist. Mr. Patel's loyalty includes touting conspiracy theories that threatened efforts at President Trump's enemies. How do we know Mr. Patel's theories, his beliefs, what motivates him, what he really believes? He wrote it in a book. This book, Government Gangsters, I urge all of you to read before you cast a vote for this gentleman. Mr. Patel has published at the back of this book a list of 60 people whom he calls, quote, members of the deep state. 60. This list includes many distinguished public servants who've dedicated their lives to our nation. Among them are Democrats and Republicans, including former Trump administration officials like the former Secretary of Defense Esper. Then there is Mr. Patel's plan to, quote, and I quote him, shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one, reopen it the next day as a museum of the deep state. And he has said, quote, we're going to come after people in the media. We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. We're putting you all on notice. Does this sound
Come at me, bro.
partisan?
I dare you, Patel.
who should lead the FBI? No, not to me. This is someone who's left behind a trail of grievances throughout his life, lashing out at anyone who disrespects him or doesn't agree with him. Don't take it from me.
I feel like all the stupid politicians are on the Republican side, and I can say that safely. The dumbest fucks I've ever heard in my life are on the Republican side of the aisle.
I
may not like some of the Democrats, but I can't say they're not smart.
FBI director.
I may not like Hakeem Jeffries, but I can't say he's not intelligent. Dick Durbin, incredibly intelligent.
No experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency. National Security Advisor John Bolton. I didn't think he was qualified. He demonstrated no policy aptitude at all. I was forced to hire him. President Trump's Deputy National Security Advisor, Charles Kupperman. The idea that Kash Patel is going to be the FBI director is appalling. His legal career is modest at best. His ideas...
He was a corporate lawyer most famous for trying to kill net neutrality, and everybody should be against that. But, oh no!
Trump proposed making Mr. Patel CIA deputy director. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Mr. Patel lied about whether Nigeria had approved a hostage rescue operation, putting American lives at risk. But Mr. Patel would have us believe that all of these public servants, all Republicans, all from the first Trump administration, and apparently anyone else who's critical of him, are nothing but government gangsters and deep state members. Many of them have made his list of enemies. Just this week, CNN reported that during the Trump...
I want to make his list of enemies.
CIA officials referred...
I would wear it as a badge of honor if the FBI came.
...investigation for sharing
drug me out of my house
without authorization. Last week, I asked the Justice Department and intelligence community for information on any criminal referrals relating to misconduct by Mr. Patel. I have yet to receive a response. Mr. Patel's record is clear. He traffics in debunked conspiracy theories that serve or benefit his political beliefs. Let's start with January 6th, and he dedicates a whole chapter in this book on January 6th.
He is what they call a sycophant.
Every one of us, as witnesses to January 6th, have our own view of. I'll be grateful always to the Capitol Hill police officers who risked their lives defending me, members of Congress, and visitors to the United States Capitol on that day. Mr. Patel posted on social media, quote, January 6th, never an insurrection. Cowards in uniform exposed. End of quote. Let me repeat that. Cowards in uniform exposed. Who was in the Capitol building on January 6th in a uniform? The Capitol Police were. Do you think they were cowards? Many of them risked their lives and some gave their lives in defense of this building.
Double cheeseburger deluxe. Welcome in.
They were in uniform. Cowards risking their lives as well. Some of them being battered and beaten by these mobsters that came on into the Capitol.
The picture of RFK being served a cheeseburger from McDonald's is hilarious.
Was planning January 6th for a year. He says the FBI was planning January 6th for a year. That's a quote. Mr. Patel has gone so far as to co-produce and sell musical recordings of a song performed by January 6 rioters in jail. Rioters who...
Wait, what? That exists and I haven't played it on stream?
This January 6 choir as, quote, political prisoners. Political prisoners. But at least 6 members pleaded guilty to assaulting law enforcement officers on January 6. All 6 have now been pardoned by President Trump. Here are some of those people who received blanket clemency by President Trump on his first day in office in the second term. Julian Cater assaulted Capitol Police officers.
Well, I didn't know it existed until just now, Carla.
Assassinating 3 officers. Ryan Nichols sprayed pepper spray on multiple police officers. After the attack, Nichols posted on Facebook, and I quote, "So yes, I'm calling for violence and I will be violent." Jordan Mink struck officers, quote, aggressively with a long pole. He spat at officers and threw large items at them. Armed with a knife, Ronald Sandlin shouted at officers, quote, "You're going to die, get out of the way." Sandlin shoved officers when they tried to lock the doors to the Senate gallery. After breaching the Capitol, James McGrew struck an officer and lunged for his baton. McGrew also threw a wooden handrail with metal brackets at officers. I want to read a sentence from this book on the January 6th experience.
So far, is that them?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
That's all it is?
And to the republic.
Well, no wonder we didn't watch it. It ain't worth a shit. Ugh.
When he was in college and graduated, a friend of his a year ahead of him had enlisted in the Marine Corps.
Oh, Shelley had seen it.
Bob was inspired to do the same thing, join up in the Marine Corps, and he did. And he was a first lieutenant in Vietnam. He received a Bronze Star with a Valor Pin, and he also received Purple Heart. He was injured in battle. I read about his experience because after he was healed from that wound to his leg, he returned to combat. He was just that kind of fella. Regardless of party, he was a real man.
He's just a good guy.
He was a longtime federal prosecutor, a U.S. attorney, the head of the DOJ's criminal division, and acting deputy attorney general before he became head of the FBI. After 9/11, I worked with him, and we had a good relationship, a professional relationship. We didn't always see eye to eye, but I respected him so much for what he had given to this country. In this book, Mr. Patel calls...
No, having a Purple Heart makes you injured in combat.
Swamp creature.
That's literally what it's for.
With all due respect, Mr. Patel, I've not worn the uniform of this country, and neither of you. To think that you would denigrate Bob Mueller's service to our country and call him a swamp creature is an indication of the depths your political views take you. The FBI plays a critical role in keeping America safe from terrorism, violent crime, and other threats. Our nation needs an FBI director who understands the gravity of this mission and is ready on day one, not someone who is consumed by his own...
Oh, Patel's an absolute nut job and should not be confirmed, but
FBI
we live in the worst
keeping our
timeline.
family safe from terrorism, drug trafficking, and violent crime. Not the checklist of grievances we find in this book. Mr. Patel, your record makes it clear you're not that person.
I'm pretty sure that Patel gets through and that Gabbard
You,
is the
Senator
one that's
Irvin,
going to get
before
knocked
you
down.
vote, Senator,
What does
tell us.
swamp creator? What does that even mean?
The way
I know
see
you mean
it,
swamp
I think,
creature and you got auto
I want to
corrected.
invite everybody.
What the fuck does that even
cleared up
mean?
This business about what Mr. Patel said about cowards in uniform. It's a mischaracterization of what he actually said. So I'm going to invite you to listen to the interview Mr. Patel gave that linked to his post to hear what he actually said. When he said cowards in uniform, he was talking about senior Pentagon leadership failing to mobilize the National Guard to protect the Capitol. His comments had nothing to do with police.
What?
Patel made his comments while discussing an article in the New York Times exposing grave miscommunication between the Department of Defense and the D.C. National Guard. So I would
Okay, if Trump picked him to piss everyone off, why would you be for that? Why is that a politics that you would
Thank you,
want to
Mr.
accept?
Chairman, Ranking Member, colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's my honor to introduce Kash Patel, President Trump's nominee to be FBI Director. I've completed due diligence on his life and career, and I'm convinced that Kash possesses significant expertise, an ironclad commitment to justice, and he's an outstanding choice to lead the FBI. Kash's parents are Indian immigrants of Gujarati ancestry. They're up here in the front row. The Gujarat state is a melting pot of religions, including Hinduism, Islam, Jainism, with temples, mosques, and other religions.
Buddy, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Our system doesn't need to be overhauled. Our democracy is the good part. It's the capitalism that's the bad part. Why do you idiots not understand that?
In Tanzania. They met.
You're upset about capitalism. Our system of government is actually really fucking good and needs to be saved.
Along with 7 brothers and sisters and their spouses and at least a half a dozen kids.
Anyone who doesn't think so is not educated in history.
His parents raised Kash in the Hindu faith, and they instilled in him the values of hard work and education. Kash is a devout Hindu, and consistent with his faith, he's shown respect to people of all faiths. Kash attended the University of Richmond, where he earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice.
I show respect to people of all faiths.
He went to Kash University School of Law, where he earned his JD and an international law certificate from the University College of London, Faculty of Laws. Kash began his career as a public defender in Florida, where he...
Dewey, I'm going to get really fucking annoyed if you just keep saying things like, we have cancer that needs to be cut out, or he's a swamp creature.
Kash clearly demonstrated...
No, you need to actually still, like, if you think Dick Durbin is stupid, you need to tell us why he's stupid.
Kash led the defense
not just assert it. That shit pisses me off.
In United States versus Bedrago, a high-profile case in Florida in 2015. Bedrago was one of the Colombian nationals arrested in a major drug bust involving Operation Backroom. Kash and his co-counsel successfully argued that key evidence was withheld by the prosecution, leading to Bedrago's release. I suspect some of Kash's disdain for prosecutorial misconduct stemmed from this experience. Kash was hired as a senior counsel on the House Permanent Select Subcommittee on Intelligence.
Well, I get annoyed with stupid shit, and saying that he's dumb because he's a Democrat just makes you look like a fucking moron. You realize that, right?
Comments shortly after they were introduced.
Exactly, Flash pointing it out. That's called it's what's called a thought-canceling cliche.
Righteous investigations go.
So if you just like automatically dismiss all Democrats,
I think Kash was ready. And he went on to establish a solid reputation for pursuing the facts.
With shit like swamp creature.
Post at the NSC.
You're not actually making an argument. You're just showing your
Since leaving the administration in 2020,
stunted intellectual capacity.
Kash has written articles and books on national security, law, and governance. Through his work as an author, Kash continues.
Saying you're not a Republican, how does that
transparency?
How does that make you functionally different than a Republican when you're in here talking about how stupid Democrats are and how the Republican nominees need to be passed or need to be confirmed?
I created a Kash bingo card that I have available to.
You can't just say most Republicans are worthless, all Democrats are worthless. You need to actually say fucking policy.
And not appropriate for this committee. Sadly,
your critiques are goddamn worthless.
Of what I expect to be witnessed today. I think we'll have words like enemies list and deep state. I've already X'd out 4.
I told you why Kash Patel should be confirmed. He was a corporate lawyer.
The fact of the matter is,
who was integral in pushing net neutrality, which you should be for.
Substantiate a false narrative. At worst, they may be just going through an unfounded litany of quotes and half-truths, some of which have already been dispelled by the chairman after the opening statements. Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, in my 10 years in the Senate, I hope I've established a reputation for being...
I am not high enough for this shit. Light one up, tip one back.
Positions that have been met with harsh criticism. Heck, I've even been censured by my entire state and 30 counties for taking tough positions. and I stand by those decisions today and my decision to support Kash Patel. When President Trump announced...
Wait a minute. The constituents of your state disapproved of you.
I contacted Trey Gowdy.
You say that proudly.
And others who worked with Kash, and they gave me glowing recommendations. So I called Kash on December the 2nd, and I offered to help him with his nomination. Since then, we have spent hours together, in person and on the phone. I've asked him difficult questions, and I've urged him to reach out to members across the aisle. In fact, Kash Patel has met with 60 members of the U.S. Senate. Every member except the last 3 who were sworn in, and the majority of the members on the other side of the dais in this committee and members off the committee. Chair Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, friends and colleagues on the committee, I've completed my due diligence of Kash Patel, and I am honored to provide my strong...
He did his research.
...for his confirmation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that introduction. Before I swear you, I want to make clear that before you give your statement, if you want to introduce...
Grassley getting ready to cuss somebody out.
You're welcome to do that. Would you please stand? Raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give to the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
He's got a punchable face.
You may proceed.
Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the Judiciary Committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I must start with a word of prayer for the tragic accident that befell our nation last night, where we lost civilians and service members. I pray for their families. I pray for law enforcement.
We have no FAA director currently, by the way.
And hopefully God will find them peace.
The FAA director resigned. Apparently it must
I'd like to welcome
behest.
my father, Pramod, and my mother, Anjana, who are sitting here today. They traveled here to get here from India. My sister's also here, Nisha.
I'm sure that has nothing to do with what happened last
just
night.
to be with me here today. It means the world that you guys are here. Jesse Krishna. I wouldn't be here today without their guidance, their unwavering support, and their relentless love. When President Trump informed me of his
We do have an update. No survivors expected, according to officials.
I was deeply honored.
I expected
Sitting here
that.
today, I carry not only the dreams of my parents, but also the hopes of millions of Americans who stand for justice, fairness, and the rule of law. My commitment to these principles is deeply rooted in my family's history, which has profoundly shaped my worldview. My father fled Idi Amin's genocidal dictatorship in Uganda, where 300,000 men, women, and children were killed based on their ethnicity, just because they happen to look like me. My mother is originally from Tanzania. She studied in India, as did my dad, and they were married there. They would later emigrate to New York, as the senator pointed out, where I was born, and we were raised in a household of my father's 7 siblings, their spouses, and at least half a dozen children. That's the only way we knew how to do things at the time, in the 70s and 80s, the Indian way. But we would soon learn the American way. These values have shaped and been the driving force of my career in 16 years of government.
Flash, that's the $1 million question, right?
Protecting the rights of the Constitution is of the utmost importance to me and has been every single time I've taken that oath of office. The recent terrorist attacks in New Orleans tragically claimed the lives of 14 innocent Americans and serve as a stark reminder that our national security is at threat, both internally and externally. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Justice, where I served, play a pivotal role in securing our...
You've got a treasonous pedophile as president, so...
If confirmed as the next FBI director, I will remain focused on the FBI's core mission.
I feel like that's an internal threat.
That is to investigate fully wherever there is a constitutional factual basis to do so, and to never make a prosecutorial decision that is solely the providence of the Department of Justice and the Attorney General. For the first 8 years after law school, I served as a public defender, first for Miami-Dade County and later for the Southern District of Florida. During that time, I represented some pretty awful human beings, charged with some pretty heinous crimes. But what I learned there was the core value that has been enshrined in me since, that due process must be provided without bias to all Americans. And if we cannot provide due process to the worst,
Weird that he calls
then
them
there can be
awful.
no due process for anyone. And our constitutional republic fails. But I battled on that hill for that due process. I would later serve in the Obama Justice Department as a terrorism prosecutor in the National Security Division, where we
I've seen
successfully
people
contributed
that
to prosecutions of terrorist
charged with
organizations like
heinous
Al-Qaeda,
crimes
Al-Shabaab,
that weren't awful
and
people.
others.
They just made awful mistakes.
I was honored to receive the 2017 Assistant Attorney General's
I've seen some
Award
awful people,
from
though.
Loretta
Trump
Lynch
released about
for my
1,500
work
of them.
in helping the Ugandans bring members of Al-Shabaab to justice for murdering 74 innocent people, including an American. I would also receive the Human Intelligence Award from the intelligence community for related work on that mission. My experiences at the National Security Division...
There is some
and would later be
controversy
followed by my
over
experiences
that.
on the National Security Council as Senior Director for Counterterrorism, and later as the Deputy Director
Dewey, put your money where your mouth is. I can show you where they're at. They're in churches.
of the Presidential Daily
They're in the White
the
House.
nation's most sensitive classified information and secrets to protect our country. My time in the White House was preceded by my time right here in Congress as a staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, where I spearheaded the
I just told you.
serious FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act abuses.
And I would, the very first place I would start is churches, because they cover it up. People always like to be like, oh, well, school teachers.
In our FBI.
Other school teachers will turn in a school teacher that is
The erosion of
doing
trust, as
something
Chairman Grassley
wrong.
pointed out,
Churches
is
cover it up.
all too low today. 40% of Americans
Been
have trust in
billions
the
to
FBI.
protect pedophiles.
In order to get it back, there's a twofold track, Senator. One, violent crime is exploding in this country, and we cannot afford them to allow it to run away. We must tackle violent crime. Just in 2023 alone, there was 100,000 rapes, 100,000 drug overdoses, and 17,000 homicides. The priority of the FBI, if I'm confirmed, will be to ensure that our communities are protected and safeguarded and our children have parks to play in and not needles to walk over. The way we do this, we let good cops be cops. We let law enforcement and we provide them with the tools necessary and resources they need to get after violent crime. The second way we do this on equal track...
I can tell you who's committing the violent crime. It's cops.
Congress. The public trust can only be restored if there is full transparency, and I am committed to that full transparency. Members of Congress have unfortunately submitted hundreds of questions that have been unanswered by the FBI in recent times. That will not occur if I am confirmed. All appropriate requests for information will be responded to expeditiously and fully. I'm committed to working alongside the dedicated men and women of the FBI. They are warriors of justice, and I will always have their backs because they have the backs of the American people. I look forward to answering your questions, and I want to take a moment to thank my family, my friends, people who traveled here, and my entire team that has made this day possible. God bless America, and I look forward to your questions.
He's Hindu. God bless America. They just made a big deal about his Hindu faith.
7 minutes first round. Is
The fuck?
7 minutes, 3 minutes the second round. Mr. Patel, I'm not going to go through all the things that you've done through your career because I said those are my opening statements, but
All right, so this is Grassley going back to Glaze, Kash Patel.
Have tried to reform
This is the Intelligence Committee, which is
to better balance
questioning Tulsi Gabbard,
and civil liberties. However,
nominated to be Director of National Intelligence.
not only did you vote against reauthorizing 702, you actually introduced legislation to fully
Senator
repeal
Mark
the whole
Warner.
thing, calling it again, quote, a blatant disregard for our Fourth Amendment constitutional rights. Now, I understand that since you've been nominated to be DNI, you've expressed a change of heart. I think that's welcome. But I have to tell you, as I view this as a job interview, as I try to make my judgment on whether you should be confirmed, I don't find your change of heart credible. Because the world today is more complex and more dangerous than ever before. And we need serious people with sufficient experience to be able to navigate that complexity. I hope you use this opportunity to address my concerns and all of the members of this committee. I appreciate again your service, and I'm looking forward to a thorough discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. We welcome back Senator Richard Burr, the former chairman.
Oh God, Cotton is the chairman of this committee now.
Introduce Ms. Gabbard. Yet still, in retirement, he still seems unable to find a pair of socks. Nonetheless, we say thank you and welcome you back, Senator Burr.
Some things are very predictable, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman Cotton, Vice Chairman Warner, members of this distinguished committee, I want to thank you for allowing me to join you today to provide my thoughts and support on behalf of Tulsi Gabbard's nomination to be Director of National Intelligence. This is my first visit back to the Senate in slightly over 2 years. Permit me to say, from this side of the dais, you're not as intimidating as I thought when I was on your side of the dais. When I was chairman of this committee, Senator
That's because you've been a senator.
Single refrain with our staff: follow the facts wherever they lead.
You're also keeping an eye on day 2 of the confirmation hearing for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He giving testimony today in front of I don't know which committee he's in front of.
People have
nominated to be Director of Health and Human Services.
Driven and evidence driven.
I think the concern is how persuadable people are. But let me go on because I have limited time. I'm going to hold myself to the same 5 minutes. Yesterday, Senator Bennett in Finance asked you if you had once previously made statements that Lyme disease was created as a military bioweapon, and you said you may have said that once. Do you still believe that Lyme disease was created as a military bioweapon?
Wasn't it?
That, Senator, what I said is that if the...
Oh, that was factual.
The evidence. And there were 3 books suggesting that. I have not read them through. What I've said is we should always follow evidence, no matter what it says. So I never have said that definitively Lyme disease was created in a biolab.
Okay.
I think Tulsi's the only one that doesn't make it through.
Do you commit that you will revise any CDC recommendations?
This is the Health Committee.
Only based on peer review, consensus-based, widely accepted science. In other words, not personal beliefs or the beliefs of any single person that you or your department may identify.
Absolutely, Senator. I am not going to go into HHS and impose my preordained opinions on anybody at HHS.
This is the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee.
HHS to do their job and make sure that we have good science that's evidence-based, that's replicatable, where the raw data is published.
I'm almost out of time, so let me get to another question.
All right.
Tulsi's the only one that's got like actual Republicans coming out against her.
Or delay review and or approval of new vaccines, and that vaccine review standards will not change from historical norms.
Oh, we will have the best vaccine standards with safety.
She's got a good 6 or 7, 8, something like that.
That's a little bit of a different answer than the question I asked, because what is the best could be in the eyes of the beholder. So let me read again. Promise that the FDA will not deprioritize or delay review and or approval of new vaccines, and that vaccine review standards will not change from historical norms.
Yes.
Great. With that, I will set a good example, and I yield my time to my ranking member.
Thank you, Chairman Cassidy, and I'm going to do what I very rarely do.
We got Bernie again.
Question for Senator Cassidy. There have been...
Yeah, Republicans that would want to send money to Ukraine are against Tulsi.
That make it very clear that vaccines do not cause autism. Now, you just said, if I heard correctly, well, if the evidence is there. The evidence is there. That's it. Vaccines do not cause autism. Do you agree with that?
As I said, I'm not going to go into HHS with any preordained.
I asked you a simple question, Bobby. The studies all over the world say it does not. What do you think?
Senator, if you show me those studies, I will absolutely, as I promised to Chairman Cassidy, I will apologize.
That is
It's been around for 20 years.
Because the studies are there. Your job was to have looked at those studies as an applicant for this job. All right. Let me ask you another question about this one about COVID. Scientists with the Yale School of Public Health and University of Maryland have estimated that the COVID vaccine saved 3 million lives and prevented 18 million hospitalizations. President Trump, someone who I do not often agree with, has said that the COVID vaccine was, quote, one of the greatest miracles of the ages. That's Donald Trump. But Bobby, you had a very different perspective. At a time when thousands of Americans were dying from COVID every week in May of 2021, you petitioned the Food and Drug Administration to revoke the emergency use of COVID vaccines. So my question to you is, were the scientists who told us that the COVID vaccine was imperative, and President Trump who told us that it was this great thing,
condom bombs?
Or were you right when you told people that they should not take COVID shots?
Senator, I filed that lawsuit after CDC recommended the vaccine for 6-year-old children without any evidence that it would benefit them and without testing on 6-year-old children. And that was my reason for filing that lawsuit.
Was the COVID vaccine successful in saving millions of lives?
I don't know.
Sure was.
Good surveillance system, unfortunately.
We don't know?
I don't think anybody can say that. If you show me science that says that.
You know, Bobby, you say if I show you, you're applying for the job. I mean, clearly, you should know this. And that is, the scientific community has established that COVID vaccines save millions of lives, and you're casting doubt. That is really problematic. All right, let me ask you another question.
Cats all in my area up here.
My Republican colleagues and President Trump are moving toward making massive cuts into Medicaid in order to provide tax breaks for the wealthiest people in this country. As I'm sure you know, Medicaid provides health insurance to tens of millions.
Not high enough for this shit.
Provides the funding for 2 out of every 3 seniors in nursing homes. It provides 43% of the revenue for community health centers, something I feel very strongly about. And it is so important for millions of people. If confirmed, in terms of making America healthy again, will you stand up to the White House and say, no, we cannot throw millions of children off of health care, millions of elderly people out of nursing homes. We cannot cut Medicaid to give tax breaks to billionaires.
Good morning, meat cakes.
Made no indication to me that he intends to throw millions of people out of nursing home or deprive people of their health care, Senator. We have a health care system that's broken. It's not working. You've been working on it your entire career. As Americans get less and less healthier, as premiums rose.
Bobby, I believe the healthcare system is broken. We
he
agree
has
on
asked
that.
me to fix it.
Because of capitalism.
You
works
fix
for
it,
the American people.
But my colleagues here, certainly in the House of Representatives, are prepared to make massive cuts in Medicaid. Now, I happen to believe in a Medicare for all system that guarantees health care to all people. Not what we're talking about. But in fact, there is serious discussion of massive cuts to Medicaid, which will have devastating harm on children, people in nursing homes. All I am asking you, if that proposal goes through, will you say, hey, you're not keeping America healthy by throwing children off of health care?
Senator, I haven't seen any of the congressional proposals. I can only tell you what President Trump has told me, which is that he wants me to make Medicaid, Medicare, and Obamacare.
Luigi.
Well, if you haven't seen those proposals, I suggest you go to any newspaper. They're there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Paul.
You know, I think the discussion over vaccines.
Dad Paul, good morning.
Simplified and dumb.
Good afternoon to you.
Get to real truths, and it's why people up here are so separated from real people at home. So we talk about hepatitis B. It's a terrible disease. It could lead to liver failure, as the chairman said. But the reason you have distrust from people at home, why they don't believe anything you say, they don't believe government at all, is you're telling my kid to take a hepatitis B vaccine when he's 1 day old. You get it through drug use and sexually transmitted. That's how you get hepatitis B. But you're telling me my kid has to take it at 1 day old. That's not science. And so every person with a bit of...
you can get it a lot of other ways, Rand.
I vaccinated all my kids. I believe vaccines are one of the modern miracles beyond all pale. The Speckled Monster is a great book about...
Shelly, if you scratched Rand Paul's eyes out...
into our country. All miracles. But I'm not a one-size-fits-all.
I would give anything in the world to piss
vaccine and we
in
did
his eye pussy.
Does that make me an awful person? Does that make me an anti-vaxxer because I questioned the government dictate of whether I do it? And I'm not speaking for anybody else. I'm only speaking for myself. But for goodness sakes, let's have an honest debate about these things. The COVID vaccine. If you ask me my opinion, the reporters run up and down the aisle and they say, you still anti-vaccine? No, I'm pro-vaccine. But on the COVID vaccine, and on the COVID illness, there was a 1,000-fold or more difference between the elderly and children. If you don't acknowledge that, you're committing malpractice. You're showing your ignorance. If you say a 6-month-old must be mandated to get it, the science is not there. So all this blather about the science says this and the science says that, no, it doesn't. The science actually shows that no healthy child in America died from COVID.
Thank you, Dr. Ball.
No healthy child died from COVID. And so the thing is that it's 1,000-fold greater. So if you ask me my advice as a physician, if you were 65 or older or overweight and some other conditions, I would have said, hell yes, I'd take the COVID vaccine. The risks of the disease were real and much greater than the vaccine. But if you ask me, should my healthy 6-month-old get it? See, these are the nuances you're unwilling to talk about because there's such a belief in submission. Submit to the government. Do what you're told. There is no discussion. There ought to be a debate. You're not going to let him have the debate because you're just going to criticize and say, it is this, and admit to it, or we're not going to appoint you. But it's more complicated than that. And this is why people distrust government, because you're unwilling to have these conversations. And go home. Ask your Democrat young mothers, your Republican young mothers, if they're vaccinating their kid for hepatitis B, and they're like, well, do I have to do it on day one? It's this precious little baby. Is there science to say you shouldn't do it? Probably not, but it's my kid.
What?
It's like, there isn't clear-cut science saying not to. But on autism, there's no good science of anything to show what causes autism. We don't know. It's a profound disease. I know many moms here and dads who have kids with autism. I know them personally. I've met their kids. But the thing is they saw their kids developing completely normal, maybe speaking 100 words go to no words at about 15 months of age. Now, there isn't proof. There isn't proof that the vaccines cause it. That's true. There isn't proof that it causes it. But we don't know what causes it yet, so shouldn't we be at least open-minded? We take 72 vaccines. Could it be? I don't know. But we shouldn't just close the door and say we're no longer, because we believe so much in submission, we're not going to have an open mind to study these things. And so it's sort of this crazy notion. Schizophrenia, I would put in the same notion. You have a kid who's completely normal to 18 or 19, and their brain goes haywire. How does that happen? It's the most bizarre disease. Shouldn't we be open? Could it be our food? It might be vaccines, it might be our food, but autism's more common. I don't know about the schizophrenia statistics, but autism is more common. Shouldn't we want to be open-minded? Instead, we're so close-minded and we're so consensus-driven that the science says this. Well, science doesn't say anything. Science is a dispute, and 10 years from now, we could all be wrong. We were told in the beginning, 20 years ago, they did this enormous study, and they said, everybody over 50 should take an aspirin. I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea. It makes sense. But you know what? 20 years later, they measured it. And they found if you had no heart disease and you were taking aspirin, your chance of dying from a brain bleed or from a stomach bleed were greater than the risk of heart disease. If you have heart disease, they still say take an aspirin. If you don't, they've changed their mind 20 years later. But would you have all said I was crazy and I should no longer be in public discourse if I had said 20 years ago, I don't feel like taking an aspirin. I ride my bike all the time. I'm afraid I might hit my head. But that's what a country's about. It's what dissent is about. So just ask you to look at the larger picture and give the guy a break who says, I just want to follow the science where it leads without presupposition. I think really what we have up here is presupposition. You've already concluded. It's absolute that autism isn't caused by it. We don't know what causes autism, so we should be more humble in what we say. Sorry I didn't get to a question.
For the record, if a child is born to a hepatitis B mother, that child may have a 95% chance of becoming a chronic carrier. But if the
And we
child-
vaccinate those people, and nobody's against that.
But if the
that
child-
that's a very small percentage
If
and
I
a
may
red herring.
finish.
That is not what we're talking about. 99.9% of kids don't have a hepatitis B, Mom. And could they wait a while? Could they get vaccinated 3 months or a year? Yes.
So again, for the record, if the mother's hepatitis B status is known, then that can be delayed. The problem is oftentimes...
Yeah, it seems like the
significant
vaccine is given in the first 24
mother's
hours if the
status
mother
is
is
not
hepatitis B positive.
If she's hepatitis B positive, a vaccine on day one of life prevents chronic hepatitis B 95% of the time.
Yeah.
It really depends upon the knowledge of the mother's hepatitis B status. And when they used to do just, okay, we know...
Rand Paul was lying.
There's mothers that snuck through. Their status was unknown. We can blame the OBs, yeah, Marshall. But for the record, there is an absolute
Milk,
rationale
good
for
morning.
that. But you're right. If the mother's status is definitively known, that it can be safely delayed. So now, Senator Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HHS has really
That's
broad
disgusting.
abilities to protect and preserve healthcare and social services.
To spread information, misinformation that could affect lives like that. Fuck you, Rand Paul.
In light of last night,
And that's why I hate
I
Republicans.
want to express my thoughts and prayers. But it is, I think, a painful reminder to all of us that we need competent people running our federal agencies to respond when a crisis.
I hope you were here for that, Dewey, and understood what
Let
just
me start
happened.
By talking about vaccines. I think we all agree that cancer is particularly nefarious chronic disease. And the American Cancer Society
Frog Tracker,
reported
what's
earlier
up?
this month that
Thank you for
women
being a
under
freaking
50
follower.
are experiencing a dramatic increase in the incidence of that disease.
Okay, let's go back to Tulsi for the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation, specifically to help Biden win the
The
election.
white was a color
Former
choice.
DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power
Kind of
to
hurting my
spy,
eyes.
to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end. President Trump's re-election is a clear mandate from the American people to break this cycle of failure, end the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community, and begin to restore trust in those who've been charged with the critical task of securing our nation. If confirmed as DNI, I will do my very best to fulfill this mandate and bring leadership to the intelligence community with a laser-like focus on our essential mission, ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. As the President's principal intelligence advisor, I'll begin by leading by example, checking my own personal views at the door, and committing to delivering intelligence that is collected, analyzed, and reported without bias, prejudice, or political influence. I enlisted in the Army because of the horrific terrorist attack on September 11th and volunteered to deploy to Iraq in 2005, where I served in a medical unit. After nearly 22 years in uniform with 3 combat deployments to the Middle East and Africa, I'm now a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, where I serve as a battalion commander of soldiers in Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas. I served in Congress for 8 years on the Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs, and Armed Services committees. And it's my experience in the military and in the halls of Congress that have given me a deep understanding of the complex challenges that our nation faces. In both roles, engaging with world leaders, in both roles, being privy to highly classified intelligence. So I know firsthand how essential accurate, unbiased, and timely intelligence is to the President, to Congress, and to our warfighters. I also know the heavy cost of intelligence failures and abuses. Senator Collins, you led the creation of ODNI specifically to address those intelligence failures of 9/11 and Iraq's so-called WMDs. The need for the ODNI under strong leadership still exists today. If confirmed, I'll bring my experience and fresh eyes to leading the intelligence community. And my day one priorities will be to assess the global threat environment, identify where gaps in our intelligence exist, integrate intelligence elements, increase information sharing, and ensure that unbiased, apolitical, objective collection and analysis to support the president and policymakers' decision-making occur. I'll work to end the politicization of the intelligence community and ensure there is a clear mission focus.
Seems like it, MILF.
On its core mission of this unbiased, apolitical collection
We got a lot of
of
one.
intelligence to secure our nation. I'll work to rebuild trust through transparency and accountability. This is a national security imperative. And I'll work to assess and address efficiencies, redundancies, and effectiveness across ODNI to ensure focus of personnel and resources is on our core mission of national security. Now, in my meetings that I've had with many of you, you expressed bipartisan frustration about recent intelligence failures as well as the lack of responsiveness to your requests for information. Whether it's the surprise October 7th Hamas terrorist attack, to the sudden takeover of Syria by Islamist extremists, failures to identify the source of COVID, anomalous health incidents, UAPs, drones, and more. If confirmed, I look forward to working with you to address these issues. Ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people is a mandate of leadership that rises above partisan politics. If confirmed, my commitment to the president, to you, and to the American people is this: I will do my very best to find the truth, no matter where it leads, and share that truth with President Trump, his advisors, and you in Congress, providing you with that unbiased, timely, and accurate intelligence as you make the tough decisions that'll impact the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. Now, before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States, accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet. I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator. I just hate
Gaddafi?
I hate that we have leaders who cozy up to Islamist extremists, minimizing them to so-called rebels. As Jake Sullivan said to Hillary Clinton,
does she think Gaddafi's still alive?
In Syria. Well, Syria is now controlled by an Al-Qaeda offshoot, HTS, led by an Islamist jihadist who danced in the streets on 9/11 and who was responsible for the killing of many American service members.
What?
Democrat senators in the past resorted to anti-Christian bigotry against some of President Trump's judicial nominees like Amy Coney Barrett and Brian Boucher. I condemned those actions as a Democrat in Congress at the time as religious bigotry.
Bobby Boucher for president.
By all of us, no matter the religion. Unfortunately, there are some Democrat senators who still don't understand the principle of freedom of religion and Article 6 of the Constitution. Quote, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Unfortunately, they're once again using the religious bigotry card, but this time,
yeah, she can be my GOP mommy.
religious bigotry against Hindus and Hinduism. If anyone is sincerely interested in knowing more about my own personal spiritual path of Hinduism, I welcome you to go to my account on X, where I'll share more on this topic. If confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will continue to live by the oath that I have sworn at least 8 times in my life.
He was indeed affiliated with a crazy-ass cult.
I will support and defend our God-given freedoms and
not the cult that's in our chat.
Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gabbard. A few reminders before we begin our 5-minute round of questioning. First, a reminder to the audience, once again, I will not tolerate disruptions or disturbances, either in favor of or in opposition to Ms. Gabbard. We all came to hear from Ms. Gabbard, not from you. 2 reminders to my colleagues. We'll have a 5-minute round of questions. Not 5.5, not 6, 5-minute round. We will also have a closed session after this hearing in which you'll have another 5-minute opportunity to ask questions. Second, if any question, as Senator Risch alluded to, begins to approach the line of classified material, my crack staff will advise me and I will ask you to hold the question until we get to a closed setting.
Mr. Chairman, could I just inquire? I was under the understanding that if in the open round, because this is the only time the American people will be able to see this judgment, you'd agreed if certain members needed to ask a second round of questions in the public setting, that would be available.
As is our custom, if a member waits until the end of the opening round and has a follow-up question, then we will permit that follow-up question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Gabbard, if confirmed, you'll be entrusted with our nation's most important secrets. We're all entrusted with that information to serve the American people and to keep our country safe.
We've still got a lot of
opening statement. We've seen too many instances in recent years
confirmation hearings to go.
Classified information and went on to abuse and politicize that trust. For example, in October 2020,
and the process continues throughout Trump's tenure because people will leave and other people will need confirmation.
Wrote a letter invoking their credentials to make false claims about
the process is never really done.
Likely being Russian disinformation. Do you agree that this was an example of intelligence professionals abusing and politicizing their past positions and credentials?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do, and it is an example of what needs to end and why the American people elected President Trump to bring about those necessary reforms.
Thank you. Will you commit that no one who abuses his past position and credentials in this fashion will hold a security clearance in the future?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I want to be fair to my Democratic colleagues. Such abuses aren't just a problem on the left. Also in 2020, President Trump's former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, published a book in which he revealed sensitive conversations with the president on national security matters, including highly classified information. He didn't submit this book for review and approval to ensure that our national security secrets were protected. Do you agree that John Bolton's actions likewise undermine public trust?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Will you commit that no one who so abuses his past position and risks the exposure of classified information by publishing a book without submitting it for review and getting approval before publication will hold a security clearance again or be trusted with classified information again?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's move on to the topic of OD&I reform that I mentioned in my opening statement. Congress originally envisioned the OD&I to be a small coordinating agency that directs, rather than replicates, the now 18 constituent agencies that make up our intelligence community. Over the years, however, the OD&I has strayed from this vision to an organization that now publicly boasts nearly 2,000 people, more than half of whom are not detailed from an intelligence agency, but rather are career OD&I bureaucrats. They've even developed centers that are producing their own analysis. Will you commit today to working with this committee to restoring the OD&I to its original size, scope, and function?
Yes, Senator, I look forward to working with you and the committee as I, if confirmed, assess the current status of who is working in the OD&I and the function that they fulfill to make sure of its effectiveness and elimination of redundancies and bloating.
Thank you. Do you support some of the policy proposals I mentioned in my opening statement about capping the size of the OD&I, eliminating OD&I taxes, returning employees back to their home agencies to do real intelligence work?
Yes, Senator, I look forward to working with you.
Let's flip back over to
assess
the confirmation hearing for FBI Director Kash Patel being grilled by Senator Whitehouse right now.
Those warnings. And I yield my 1 second back.
Before Senator Cornyn, you said you'd like to explain something. I forget the point he made. You can do that now if you want to.
Simply this, Senator. In the collective, all of those statements are taken out of grotesque context. And anyone that thinks my 16 years of service isn't exemplary on how I would proceed if confirmed as FBI is intentionally putting false information into the public ether and creating more public discourse. The only thing that will matter if I'm confirmed as a
using your own words
is
to
a
illustrate your position.
depoliticized system of law enforcement completely devoted to rigorous obedience of the Constitution and a singular standard of justice.
Before I call on Senator Cornyn, I'd like to say that we've heard about the January 6th pardons. I think it's important that we remind people at the same time of some pardons by the previous administration. Thomas Sanders, a kidnapper who murdered a 12-year-old girl named Lexus and her mother, Swell Roberts. Adrian Peeler, a Connecticut drug kingpin who was convicted in the death.
I'd give Grassley a titty slap, but I'd be afraid it'd kill him.
Leonard Peltier, that's already been referred to, that murdered 2 FBI agents. And even Director Wray, at that time, former Director Wray, said that shouldn't have happened. And Judge Michael Conahan, who took kickbacks for wrongly sending juveniles for profit detention centers.
Yeah, fuck that dude.
Alex Saab.
We covered that one.
Laundered illicit proceeds for narcotics terrorists. Nicholas Madero, and was a key connection between Venezuela and Iran, and 5 family members of his own family. President Biden did that. Senator.
Welcome, Mr. Patel. Do you believe America is an exceptional nation?
What a stupid fucking question.
Your family went through a lot to get here.
They sure did.
And your life story is, I think, a great example of people pursuing the American dream. Do you believe what a large part of what makes America an exceptional nation is the rule of law?
It is one of the fundamental precepts that determines that.
And why is that?
Because without a singular application of a rule of law, we go back to the Uganda that my father fled in Idi Amin.
I believe that the 2 most important institutions in America to preserve and protect and enforce the rule of law are the FBI and the Department of Justice. And the sort of politicalization that Senator Graham and others have already talked about during the Crossfire Hurricane investigation or project of James Comey at the FBI, and the abuse of intelligence tools like Title I of Section 702 are a betrayal of American values and adherence to the rule of law. And I think your biggest task is going to be, along with Pam Bondi at the Office of the Attorney General, is to restore the rule of law to the Department of Justice and the FBI. Are you willing to do that?
Absolutely, Senator.
Without regard to partisan affiliation or politics?
Absolutely.
Do you believe President Trump, as the commander-in-chief, needs access to all of the lawfully available intelligence that can be collected by the American intelligence community in order to inform him so that he can make good judgments as commander-in-chief to assure the safety and security of the American people?
Having been responsible for the collection and predication and promulgation of that intelligence, I firmly believe he and every president must have it.
And so you would not support any impractical or perhaps immaterial or unworkable ways to inhibit the flow of that information to President Trump?
No, I would not.
So let me just ask you, you and I have talked about this a number of times, and this has come up before in a number of different contexts. But as I've always said, I think Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is the most important law that most Americans have never heard of. Yeah. But when I was questioning my fellow Texan, John Ratcliffe, who now has been confirmed as the director of the CIA, about this, we talked about some of the reforms that have been made to Section 702 over the years. This is
that's the FISA warrant
here in Congress. People like my colleague here, Senator Lee, and others have proposed reforms, which I think have gone a long way to help protect the privacy rights of American citizens. But let me just point out some of the improvements that have been made over the years. This is not the same 702 that was in effect during President Trump's first terms. These are a number of things that we did together on a bipartisan basis to make sure that the balance between the national security interests of the American people and the privacy and constitutional rights of American citizens were protected. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Senator, I do.
And I think Senator Tillis, with his typical outstanding graphics, has a wonderful handout which lays all of that out. But one of the things that's come up, and we've discussed this, is the idea that in order to query lawfully collected intelligence under Section 702, that somehow if a U.S. person's name is involved, that a warrant would be required. Now, you're a lawyer who's represented defendants as a public defender. You understand that what probable cause is required, what sort of evidence is required to be produced to a judge in order to get a warrant. Do you believe a warrant requirement is a practical and workable or even a necessary element of 702?
If I may just give some context on that, Senator. Having a background not only utilizing FISA and 702 as a national security prosecutor, but as a civilian at JSOC and later as an intelligence official and the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, 702 collection formulates over 45% of the presidential daily briefing that you referred to earlier.
I actually have heard it's as high as 60%. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And the issue for me is not with FISA and 702. The issue has been those that have been in government service and abused it in the past. And so we must work with Congress to provide the protections necessary for American citizens. Dealing with these matters, including hostage rescue operations in real time, which we use FISA collection to find and save American hostages, having a warrant requirement to go through that information in real time is just not comportive with the requirement to protect American citizenry. I'm all open to working with Congress on finding a better way forward, but right now,
that was not the answer expected from
that
him.
you may go a long way.
Well, and Director Ratcliffe said that he did not believe that, given the context of 702 collection, whether a foreign target communicates with a U.S. person, that there'd be sufficient evidence to go to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court or any other court to demonstrate probable cause. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, just in real time, Senator, excuse me, it's almost impossible to make that function and serve the national no-fail mission.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you point out the lack of trust. Any of these tools can be abused by people who are willing to break the law or abuse these tools or violate the public trust. Director Ratcliffe again used, I thought, a helpful analogy. I'll see if you agree with it. He said the knives in your kitchen have a very useful and beneficial purpose, but they too can be misused
but not guns, though.
Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Senator.
And similarly, do you agree that tools like Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act can be used appropriately to protect national security, but they can also be abused by people who are willing to cross a line they should not cross?
They're both true, and that's why we need to work together to make sure Americans have trust again in these surveillance measures that we utilize to protect our country.
Thank you.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I think you know that I have great respect for the
Amy Klobuchar is becoming like the pit bull
their
of my
mission,
life.
fidelity, bravery,
It's constantly
integrity.
haunting me.
I believe they deserve a director who respects their work
everywhere.
and sacrifices, and they deserve a director who's focused on their mission. This is not about bingo cards or games. This is not about revenge. This is about the safety of our country and the people that work in the FBI. And the FBI runs on facts, it runs on truth. Truth matters, and without truth, the whole system breaks down. You said that Donald Trump has every right to tell the world that in 2020, 2016, and every other election in between was rigged by our government because they were. Yes or no, did you say that?
I don't have that statement in front of me. But
Okay, that was from August 27th, 2023 Thrive Time show. I'll put it on the record. These claims made in that statement were rejected by courts, including by Republican judges. Is that correct?
I don't have enough of the facts in front of me to make that assessment.
I will put that statement on the record, but I think everyone in this committee, including the Republican members, knows that these statements were rejected by courts. You were asked about the police officers in the Capitol who testified in the January 6 hearings, and you accused them of lying. Is that correct or not correct?
I don't think that's accurate.
How my hair fares in a blizzard.
Podcast, March 2024.
We've been going through a blizzard last couple of
I was
weeks.
there. The police officers were heroes that day.
Yes.
Did you post on your personal social media account in May of
frizzy
2024, January 6th, never an insurrection, cowards in uniforms exposed. They broke the chain of command.
I believe you're referencing a post that was shown in part earlier. I don't have it in front of me.
You posted it, and it was on your account, and we will again put that out there.
My Lord, good morning.
As we go on. I don't want to lose any more time on this, but every one of these, there's a record of it, and you haven't answered. You promoted a COVID vaccine reversal or detox supplement. One scientist said, I quote, none of these substances in any form would minimize side effects from a COVID-19 vaccine. That is preying on innocent people. Did you perform clinical trials before you made that claim?
I'm not a doctor, so no.
But you did promote this supplement and told
Oh, no, I don't remember Goldfish.
or mitigate the side effects from COVID vaccine.
Did I give people
I smoke a lot of pot.
a choice for what's best for their families? Yes.
You did that last year, correct?
I don't have it in front of me again, Senator.
Mr. Patel, the FBI tackles some of the most complex threats that we face. Terrorists, hostile foreign powers, violent gangs, fentanyl, criminal organizations. Your mission, though, has been to go after people. I've looked at it. I've read this stuff. Yes or no? When Trump wins, did you say this? When Trump wins in 2024 and is in power in 2025, we can prosecute them, referring to Justice Department officials for an actual RICO statute violation, for criminally organizing the United States government to break the law to rig presidential elections. Did you say that, yes or no?
Again, Senator, you're reading a partial statement, so I'm unable to fully respond.
Okay, again.
Oh, I have memory problems anyway, exacerbated by the amount of marijuana I smoke.
That is from, I'll get you the date, about a year ago. One of the names on your list was Bill Barr. Chairman Grassley has called him one of the most capable cabinet officials I've ever been able to vote for. Senator Graham has said, I have nothing but total respect and admiration for the job done by William Barr as Attorney General of the United States. Is Bill Barr on your list of whatever you want to call them, been referred to as an enemies list? You've called them deep state after serving his country as the Attorney General of the United States. Is he on your list because of a personal vendetta?
Well, it's not whatever we want to call it, Senator. With all due respect, it's not an enemies list. That is a total mischaracterization.
I asked you,
And-
Didn't he call it that?
Words you used for the list, which was deep state, right? That's what you put at the
It is a
top.
glossary
Against
in
the
the
Attorney
back.
General of the United States. Is it because of a personal vendetta that he's on the list? You're under oath.
I have no personal vendetta against Bill
Okay, he said about you, you would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. that was actually in writing in his book. He had virtually, about you, no experience that would qualify you to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, and that your appointment, as noted by Senator Durbin as Deputy Director to the FBI, would happen over his dead body. Is it, yes or no, why you would put him on the list of deep state as a former Attorney General, Trump Attorney General of the United States, because he wouldn't break the law for Donald Trump? Is that why?
Absolutely not.
As you know, he repeatedly told the president in no uncertain terms that he did not see evidence of fraud that would have affected the outcome of the election. Did you say in February of 2021 that the election stuff was never my job and I stayed out of that stuff?
Again, I don't know what comment you're referring to, but I'm sure you're reading a piece of something.
You said it on Pushback on a podcast. Is it true, though, that in December of 2020, you reached out to the Trump acting Deputy Attorney General and asked him to investigate a conspiracy theory claiming that people in Italy had used military technology and satellites to remotely tamper with voting machines in the U.S. and switch votes for Trump from Trump to Biden? Is that true?
What was the date?
That was out of December of 2020.
I was Chief of Staff to the Department of Defense, so I don't believe that's accurate anyway.
Okay, that came out of testimony before Congress. I will give it to you. Have you referred to the media as the most powerful enemy of the United States that they have ever seen? Is that right?
Again, you're reading a quote. I take that you're reading it accurately.
H2CPAC 22324. You said we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens who helped Joe Biden rig the elections. We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that something you said?
That's a partial statement of what I said.
Steve Bannon's podcast. You also said you would put the
Bannon.
fake news mafia press corps on your list. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
I don't have that in front of me.
Benny Johnson's podcast, 821-23.
Fucking Benny Johnson.
You have said that the FBI, including today, you said that they remain utterly corrupt. This is an agency with agents who have taken down terrorists, taken down bank robbers, taken down crime. And you wrote that the FBI has become so thoroughly compromised that it will remain a threat to the people unless drastic measures are taken. Do you know that under Chris Wray's leadership, he took over at a very difficult time, we all know that, appointed by President Trump, that during his tenure, the applications to the FBI has in fact tripled? Do you think people would be applying to that agency like in those numbers if they thought it was so corrupt?
The American public's trust in it is at 40%. That's an all-time low.
Did you say that the FBI had
because of right-wing propaganda
and reopen as a museum of the deep state?
Mr. Chairman, are we allowed to go an extra time?
Let's see. You get a second round. Before I call on Senator Lee.
Could he just answer the question if he said FBI headquarters where they investigate cybercrime and terrorism should be shut down and opened as a deep state?
Hey, Mr. Chair.
As a museum. Did he say that the headquarters should be shut down?
Mr. Chair.
I deserve an answer to that question. He is asking to be head of the FBI, and he said that their headquarters should be shut down.
Mr. Chair, parliamentary inquiry.
You got anything you want to say, Mr. Patel, before I go on to Senator Lee?
Simply this. If the best attacks on me are going to be false accusations and grotesque mischaracterizations, the only thing this body is doing is defeating the credibility of the men and women at the FBI. I stood with them here in this country. In every theater of war we have, I was on the ground in service of this nation. And any accusations leveled against me that I would somehow
dude was in Vietnam
before the Constitution are grotesquely unfair. And I will have you reminded that I have been endorsed by over 300,000 law enforcement officers to become the next director of the FBI. Let's ask them.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, I am quoting his own words from September of 2024. It is his own words. It is not some conspiracy. It is what Mr. Patel actually said himself. Facts matter.
You forget that you had 3 minutes in the next round to say what you just said.
Okay, I'll say him again.
Oh, Grassley getting upset.
Before I call Lee.
Mr. Chair, just parliamentary inquiry, and it was on time. It wasn't disputing any of the debate, but I intend to keep to my 7 minutes, and I appreciate you keeping everyone to it. If we go over, can we have that decrement against the time in the second round? If a member goes over, that was actually 10 minutes, Mr. Chair.
I'm not sure that I want to. Sometimes it's faster to get things done here, just letting people shout than it does to shut them up.
Mr. Chairman,
you're a wise man, Mr. Chair. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Before we go to
Kennedy.
Yes. What do you want?
Yes. What do you want?
I love this guy.
Nigga, good morning.
Mr. Chairman, I'm unlike Senator Tillis. I mean, if we're going to start this, I want an extra 3 minutes.
Well,
now, my friend Senator Klobuchar went 3 minutes over.
So, here what you're saying is the chairman wasn't a very good chairman by not shutting her up. But I've gone through this before, and I think I know how to handle it. And get
I think you're a star-spangled awesome chairman. I just want to say that for the record. But if you're going to let somebody over there go 3 minutes over, I want my extra 3 minutes.
Well, let's see if it's abused by anybody else before we make that decision.
I'm just telling you, I'm going to abuse it.
Oh.
Well, I'm not going to let you abuse it.
You're a good man, Mr. Chairman.
Before I go to Lee, I want to put a statement in the record from 56 former FBI agents wrote to this committee to support this nominee. Quote, never has the FBI faced such an urgent and compelling need for comprehensive reform as it does today. Mr. Patel has proven he possesses the breadth of experience required to address these challenges. His leadership, expertise, and vision make him uniquely qualified to guide the FBI through this pivotal moment. For these reasons, we stand in full support of Kash Patel's nomination. Any objection? So ordered. Mr. Lee.
Mr. Patel, while we're talking about your awards, let's talk about the cowards in uniform comment for a moment, can we?
Please.
Would you like to tell us what that was? Put it in context, help the committee understand what that was about.
He didn't remember it, did he?
Thank you, Senator. During that time on January 6th, I was serving as Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense. And days prior, we had received the authorization from the President to issue the National Guard to protect you and your colleagues. But as you know, the law requires a request before the deployment of that guard. That request did not come in until the afternoon of January 6th. Once that request came in, this unfortunately, as has been confirmed by his own testimony, I believe, the Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, failed to immediately deploy the National Guard and instead took a break to speak to media and make personal phone calls. That endangered the safety of you and your colleagues. And if you look at the Biden Inspector General report, we at the Department of Defense authorized the fastest cold start of the National Guard since World War II and the largest occupation since the American Civil War. And the Biden Justice Department said that we, including myself, as Chief of Staff, when it came to the deployment and employment of the National Guard, acted swiftly and without undue delay.
So that's what you were talking about. And that's why you had the reference to the UCMJ. Tell us what that means.
The Uniform Code of Military Justice is for uniform officers who betray the code of justice and also act inappropriately. And I thought any delay to have the National Guard arrive on scene here must be called out, whether it was a fellow Republican or not, especially
So were the rioters dangerous?
Running the Department of Defense.
Okay, so moments ago...
Were they hostages? Political...
With that quote, there was a reference in part of it to the UCMJ. That's what it was referring to.
Yes, sir.
Those were the cowards in uniform. Those people who didn't do what they were supposed to do, and a lot of people were put in danger as a result.
That's correct, Senator.
Okay, thank you. That's very good to know. I do find it significant that we've heard all kinds of aspersions cast in your direction by people who do not know you, by people who do not share your worldview, by people who do not share your commitment to the Constitution or your commitment to public service.
I need more
coffee.
coffee.
I find it astounding that they're willing to say this amidst such great ignorance, and I find it equally heartening that the 56 former FBI officials who know you best, who have worked with you, who actually know who you are, who actually share your view of the Constitution, of the view that you ought to be a law enforcement agency and not a weapon of political warfare. These are the people who stand by you. Those who cast aspersions don't share those views. Would I be correct in surmising that?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about the Fourth Amendment for a moment. The Fourth Amendment tells us that in order for the government to breach your expectation of privacy relative to your person, your home, your papers. If they want to search that, if they want to seize you, they've got to get a warrant. And that warrant has to describe with particularity the persons or places to be searched or to be seized, and to connect them up with a showing of probable cause. Now, in the case of FISA 702, we're dealing with a somewhat different universe. Now, moments ago, we heard some discussion about FISA 702, about suddenly we've got a different FISA 702 than what we had when President Trump was last in office. Is that true? Because by my count, FISA 702 has not changed substantively since President Trump was in office last.
That's correct.
Okay. And there was also some back and forth discussion about FISA 702 and the use of it, and the fact that in real time, it might not work to get a warrant. This, in my view, misses the point. The concern that the American people have with FISA 702 is not about the real-time collection of communications regarding foreign targets. The concern is that once those communications are stored, you have within them what are referred to as incidentally collected communications of Americans. Text messages, emails, recorded phone calls, and so forth. If they want to go in and search for someone, let's say you, if someone wants to go into one of those databases after they've been collected, let's see if you're unwittingly communicating with somebody who, unbeknownst to you, happens to be an agent of a foreign power or otherwise under surveillance under FISA 702. If they wanted to search for you, they wanted to enter your name, your phone number, your email address, or some other personal electronic identifier, would they have to get a warrant to do that under current law?
Under current law, I believe so, Senator.
Under current law, they routinely access that without getting a warrant. In order to access it, they've got their own internal procedures. They're not supposed to use this for light or transient reasons. They're supposed to have a perfectly good reason, and yet we found that on hundreds of thousands of occasions, they have accessed the private...
Skinhead Lee over here is really boring me
searching
now.
for those individual Americans by name, by number, by email address, whatever it is.
I guess he was going bald, so he just went with
or
it
anything
totally.
tantamount to it. On occasion, they've
Really
even been
freaking
used
me
for
out.
overtly nefarious reasons.
Let's go back to old Bobby.
It's important. I respect them. We should hear them out. We should debate. We should have a congenial conversation. There are also people
Maynard's
who
got the
believe
zoomies.
that it is an atrocity. And they need to be listened to too. And we need to embrace diversity and make room for diversity in this country and not force people to do things.
Kills me that Cheryl is sitting right behind him.
This rule, what's particularly pernicious about it is we're talking about gender transition surgeries, gender transition care on minors.
DJ Dub.
This rule purported to preempt all state law. So in states like mine and
Senator
many
Josh
others,
Hawley.
where the voters have said, we don't want gender transition procedures performed on minors, the Biden administration attempted to use federal money.
I'm pretty sure her name's still Cheryl.
Do it anyway. So I'm glad to hear you say you'll rescind that rule. I think it's terrific for the safety of children.
And Senator, I would add that we don't let children drink. We don't let them drive an automobile because they have bad judgment. They are flooded with hormones. Their brains are still in formation. Their sexuality is still in formation. To allow them to make judgments about...
It's not about judgment. It's about, brain development.
Forever. Implications for the rest of their life at that age is unconscionable, particularly in light of the Kash report.
I'm glad to hear you say that. Let me ask you a question about NIH research, if I may. I know this is something that you care a lot about. Under the first Trump presidency...
And I do want to add that people who have gender differences should be respected. They should be loved. And loving them does not sometimes love means saying no to people.
Let me, on NIH, under the first Trump presidency, HHS stopped new NIH research that involved human fetal tissue from elective abortions. Now, you were asked about this sort of tangentially yesterday by Senator Cantwell, and I want to get your quote right. You said to her correctly, you said stem cell research today can be done on umbilical cords and you don't need any fetal tissue, which is correct. My question to you is, will you reinstate President Trump's policy that ensures that no federal research and no federal tax dollars is conducted on fetal tissue taken from elective abortions?
Yes.
Fantastic. Let me ask you just
Why?
about 10. You were asked about this yesterday too, and I think I understand your answer. I just want to be sure I've got it crystal clear. Title 10, which prohibits the funding of the use of federal taxpayer funding for abortions or to flow to entities like Planned Parenthood that perform abortions or refer people to abortions. You were asked yesterday if you would support President Trump's rule that says no Title 10 funding for those who perform abortions or refer people to abortions. I think your answer was yes, you would reinstate that rule. I just want to be sure I'm right about that.
Yes.
Fantastic. Last point that I have for you. On mifepristone, the chemical abortion drug, you said yesterday that you would study its safety. I think that's good. I want to make an additional point here just about how the Biden administration changed the rules on mifepristone that I hope that you'll take into consideration, because you pointed out.
Yes, kids are only allowed to drink if they're driving.
That we need to honor the wishes of voters and states and their right to set life policy. I just
very firm in this position.
Rule on mifepristone, which they did after the Dobbs decision, means that in any state, including ones like mine, where voters or state legislators say we don't want abortion performed after a certain point, if the Biden
Oh shit, that's why we have school shootings in this country, isn't it? We don't let kids drink.
Without a doctor visit or referral, that means no
They could tie one off.
No state decision, no vote.
Blow off some steam.
We're going to have a one-size-fits-all policy set here in Washington. I hope you'll take that into consideration.
I will implement President Trump's policies.
Senator Hassan.
You don't see school shootings in countries where the 14 is the legal age.
Good morning, Mr. Kennedy. Look,
We're drinking,
I want to just
drinking,
take a moment
drinking.
because, like a few of us on this dais, I sit on finance as well as help. And one of the things that was most disturbing to me about yesterday's hearing was the suggestion from some of my friends on the other side of the dais that our intense questioning and concerns about Mr. Kennedy were driven by partisanship. I have voted for 5 of President Trump's nominees to date in the last couple of weeks. One of them, the new Secretary of Transportation, was on the scene last night at DCA. Like all of us, I take really seriously our obligation for advice and consent. And I am concerned, as Senator Mullen expressed his concern, about the need for science to help us move forward on critical issues. Now, some of you are new to this committee and new to the Senate, so you may not know that I am the proud mother of a 36-year-old young man with severe cerebral palsy. And a day does not go by when I don't think about what did I do when I was pregnant with him that might have caused the hydrocephalus that has so impacted his life. So please do not suggest that anybody in this body of either political party doesn't want to know what the cause of autism is. Do you know how many friends I have with children who have autism? The problem with this witness's response on the autism cause and the relationship to vaccines is because he's relitigating and churning settled science so we can't go forward and find out what the cause of autism is and treat these kids and help these families. Mr. Kennedy, that first autism study rocked my world. And like every mother, I worried about whether, in fact, the vaccine had done something to my son. And you know what? It was a tiny study of about 12 kids, and over time, the scientific community studied and studied and studied and found that it was wrong. And the journal retracted the study because sometimes science is wrong. We make progress.
No, that doctor was a grifter.
The work, and we become more
I forget his
successful.
name.
And when you continue to sow doubt about settled science, it makes it impossible.
It wasn't a science was wrong thing.
So
no.
that's what the problem is here. It's the relitigating and rehashing and continuing to sow doubt so we can't move forward, and it freezes us in place. Now let me move on to my other concerns from yesterday's hearing. During yesterday's hearing, you really showed a lack of knowledge about Medicare and Medicaid. So what
Wakefield,
is Medicare
yes.
Part A?
Thank you, Colt.
Medicare Part A pays mainly for primary care or physicians. And then
You, DJ Dub.
It is about Medicare Part
Good
A.
morning, my
is
friend.
Seniors coverage for inpatient hospital care. What's Medicare Part B?
for physicians and doctors, Medicare care, Part D
That is coverage
for
for outpatient care and home health.
And fabulous job by Senator Maggie Hessen.
Medicare Part C is a program where it's the full menu of all the services A, B, C, and D for Medicare.
It is Medicare Advantage, which it's the private insurance option for seniors on Medicare. So, Mr. Kennedy, you want us to confirm you to be in charge of Medicare, but it appears that you don't know the basics of this program. So let's turn
I
to
just explained the
Medicaid.
basics.
No, I had to correct you on several things.
Oh, you just
let's turn
added
to Medicaid.
information,
Yesterday,
Senator. You didn't
said
correct me. I didn't get it wrong.
Mr. Kennedy, my time is limited, and I hope the chair will give me
Is
a
this a
couple of more
question,
minutes.
Senator?
Yes, Medicaid.
All right, because you're
let's
giving me
turn
very
to
little
Medicaid.
time to answer one.
Let's turn to Medicaid. Medicaid, you said yesterday to Senator Cassidy, Medicaid is fully paid by the federal government, and it's not fee for service. That statement is false. Do you now understand that that statement is false, yes or no?
That Medicaid is paid for by the federal government, I believe that.
You said it is fully paid for. Medicaid, in fact, sir,
Well,
is
no,
a federal
the
state
state
partnership.
has a partnership.
Right, so you were wrong yesterday, so you're acknowledging that
Well,
that statement was false, right?
I misstated something.
All right, good. So yesterday, when you were questioned about Medicaid, you repeatedly dodged questions by saying you want to make it better. Republicans are circulating a proposal that would end Medicaid expansion in some states, including in New Hampshire. So I will submit this for the record, but it is important to me to understand whether you believe that taking Medicaid away from 60,000 people in New Hampshire would make Medicaid better. And would it make New Hampshire healthy again? I'll submit that for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Tuberville.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for being here. Being a few months older than me, I'm going to be respectful to your elder.
Not by much.
Yeah, that's right. But thank you. Look at this room. We hadn't had a full room in here since I've been in here 4 years on any hearing. Thank you for bringing the light to what this is all about. It's about health in our country. There might have been a half a dozen people in the last Health and Human Services nominee.
This is one of the dumbest people in the country, not just in the Senate.
California didn't do a damn thing in terms of what we needed when COVID was full steam. So thank you. Thank you for getting our young people involved. My two boys, 28 and 30, a year or so ago, they were going to vote for you for President of the United States. You know why? Because you're trying to save their group of people.
Because they're fucking stupid.
And the things that we have in our food. They're fired up about it. And you brought light to that. And thank God you've done that. You brought importance to what we're doing. You know, I coached for 40 years. In the last 4 or 5 years I coached, I'd never seen like the run
You
on.
say it's not a football game, but here's Coach Tuberville.
Across this country. We have a attention deficit problem in this country. You know, attention deficit, when you and I were growing up, our parents didn't use a drug, they used a belt and whipped our butt, you know, and told us to sit down. Nowadays, we give them Adderall and Ritalin. It's like candy across college campuses and high school campuses. Mr. Kennedy, what are we going to do about that?
Today,
wow,
15% of American kids are on Adderall. And there's clearly a major problem.
We used to abuse children instead of diagnosing their medical conditions.
With our entire population.
We should go back to abusing children.
4.2% of the world's population. And
Senator from Alabama, everyone.
Pharmaceutical drugs. And there's a recent study by Peter Ghosh, who is one of the founders of the Cochrane Collaboration, that showed that prescription drugs are now the third largest cause of death in our country after cardiac arrest and cancer. We're not getting healthier. Americans are getting less and less healthy. 70% of pharmaceutical profits globally come from our country, which has 4.2% of the world's population. We're the only country that allows full-scale pharmaceutical ads on TV. And we're all being told you can make
I agree with that.
Anything you want, you can smoke anything you want, you can do anything you want, and there'll be a drug to fix you in the end. And it is not a good formula. And our kids are getting sicker and sicker. They're not getting better. Nobody here, all the people here who are defending this current system and defending these pharmaceutical industry profits, many of whom are taking huge amounts of money on the pharmaceutical industry, millions of dollars, for many of these senators. And none of that, this is not making our country healthier. It's making us sicker. We need to get rid of these conflicts. We need good science, and we need good leadership that is able to stand up to these big industries and not bend over for them.
Thank you. And you brought to light the vaccines over the last couple of years. I've had my granddaughter here in a couple of weeks, and my son and his wife have done their research about vaccines, and she's not going to be a pincushion. We're not going to allow that to happen. But you brought that up, but as you and I talked about vaccines, Coach, let's empower scientists to do their job. You know, let's go by what they do. Let's don't just do something for the pharmaceutical company. So I appreciate you doing that. One other thing is you and I talked about red dye number 3, and just happened, you and I talked about that, and a few days later in this room we had the FDA director. And I asked him, why do we use red dye 3 in our cosmetics? Or we don't use it in cosmetics, we use it in our food, but we don't use it in cosmetics because it causes cancer. What in the heck's going on? Well, a few weeks later, because of your insistence, we dropped it. So tell me about dyes and things that you're concerned about, because I get more talk about that than anything.
We have 10,000 ingredients in our food in this country because FDA employs a standard called the GRAS standard and looks at any new chemical as innocent until proven guilty. In Europe, they have 400 ingredients in their foods. Kellogg's makes Fruit Loops for the United States alone. It is loaded with red dye, blue dye, yellow dye, and many, many other ingredients. They make the same product for Canada that's all vegetable dyes. And for Europe, if you eat a McDonald's French fry in this country, it has 11 ingredients. You eat the same product in Europe, it has 3. But we are allowing these companies, because their influence over this body, over our regulatory agencies, to mass poison American children. And that's wrong. It needs to end. And I believe I'm the one person who's able to end it.
Thank you.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Kennedy, good to see you. I wanted to just start by asking you if you support medically assisted treatment to help people get off of opiate addiction.
Yes, I do.
Do you think it's safe?
Senator Andy Kim, I believe.
Standard of the approach.
The Cochrane
New Jersey taking the seat of
prestigious
convicted felon Bob Menendez
organization has said that the gold standard is has found in studies. A gold standard is 12-step programs. You need an entire
12-step program
of treatments because many addicts will not respond immediately, at least to 12-step programs. And for many of them, Suboxone,
so we're talking about the gold standard,
and even methadone are critical interventions that save lives, that get addicts off the street.
You're correct, DJ Dub.
As a treatment option. I wouldn't describe them as gold standard, but I would describe them as medically necessary.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about monetary policy. I guess 12-step makes
seriously in terms of the
lot more sense.
Opiate addiction in our country. And that's something that I hope we can recognize. We need to lift up more and more. I mean, NIH,
I'm really tired. I'm sorry.
Not enough people are doing it. And in fact, an NIH published study does call it the gold standard of treating for opiate use disorder. You're on a mission against and fighting against chronic disease. You talk a lot about obesity. I wanted to get your thoughts if you support Wegovy, Ozempic, other similar types of GLP-1 drugs to fight obesity.
The GLP-1 drugs, the GLP drugs, the class of drugs are miracle drugs. But I do not think they should be the first frontline intervention for 6-year-old kids for whom they are currently. That is the standard of practice now. if every American who qualifies for GLP by being overweight, 74% of our population asked for them, and the federal government was paying for it, it would cost over $1 trillion a year. It would double the insurance costs for employers in this country, and it would be a tsunami. And they have a lot of side effects.
You said you support it, but that you don't see it being the
I am
tool
so
of
not
choice
high enough for this shit.
especially young kids. Is that
Exactly.
correct?
If you're
Light one up, tip one back.
people have morbid obesity, for people with diabetes, absolutely. And they shouldn't be prescribed alone without also prescriptions for exercise, because otherwise they eat away at muscle and they're counterproductive. They go
Curb Your Enthusiasm is like my favorite show of all time.
Side effects. About half the people on GLPs get off of them after 2 years, and then there's problems when you get off them. So
worlds colliding here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to move on to just clarify some statements you made in the past. In the past, you said, quote, Wi-Fi radiation does all kinds of bad things, including causing cancer. Do you still stand by that statement?
Yes, or I won a case in front of the Court of Appeals against the FCC on that very issue.
And 5G, do you feel the same way about 5G?
Well, I'm just saying electromagnetic radiation does.
And RF, you think?
I mean, the alien worms would probably
issue that
be
comes
the
before,
most likely explanation, right?
And let me just clarify that. It changes DNA, and there are scientific studies that have linked it to cancer, many of them.
What?
But it does other things that
Good morning,
are
T-minus.
neurological injury, that are kind of the other frontline injuries that we're most concerned about and that are best documented.
One other issue that comes before your work, if you're confirmed, I wanted to ask if you would support and continue and expand CDC's role in collecting and disseminating data on firearm mortality in the United States, something that
I believe that we need to study the causes of mass shootings. We need to study all the causes.
When it came to, you said earlier in response on avian flu, you would continue the investments, that you would support vaccine development. I just want to clarify, does that mean you support investments in mRNA vaccine research and development?
I'm not going to pick a vaccine right now. I need to look at all the data. I need to look at safety data and efficacy data. But
Cash was the next stop I was going to make.
Every kind of vaccine.
I'm going to flip back to him here in a second.
Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator.
We're going to go back to Kash Patel. That was RFK in front of the Health Pensions Committee. This is Senator Michael Bennett questioning. Oh, I'm sorry. Tulsi Gabbard. We're going back to Tulsi Gabbard.
When the rubber hits the road, this is
I will work with you to make sure that there is not
a
another
moment
Snowden
for
like
social
leak.
media. It's not a moment to propagate theories, conspiracy theories, or attacks on journalism in the United
Bennett
States.
from Colorado.
This is when you need to answer the questions of the people whose votes you're asking for to be confirmed as the chief intelligence officer of this nation. As my colleague said, this is not about you. It's about the people that serve the intelligence agencies of the United States. Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
No.
That is not a hard question to answer.
No, it's not.
The stakes are this high.
No, he's not.
Senator, as someone who has
your
served
answer,
in
yes
uniform,
or no,
He's a fucking hero.
Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
as someone who has
I'll go on
worn
to
our
my
uniform in
this
combat, I understand how critical our national security
Apparently
is.
you don't. Apparently you don't. Let me ask you. I've worked very hard to put your own words here in front of the committee. Not
what does Bennett believe on that issue?
Not conspiracy theories on the internet, but the actual things that you have said. On February 23rd, 2022, at the very moment that Russian tanks were rolling across the peaceful border of Ukraine for the first time, you tweeted at 11:30 p.m. your time, This war and suffering could have easily been avoided if Biden administration / NATO had simply acknowledged Russia's legitimate security concerns regarding Ukraine's becoming a member of NATO. Did you say that, yes or no?
I believe you're reading my tweet, Senator.
Yes is the answer. A few months later,
I believe you're quoting me is what she just said.
Quoted it. Quote, but this regime change war against Russia that the U.S. and NATO are waging via their proxy in Ukraine didn't begin when Putin invaded Ukraine. They had their eyes set on this objective long before that. Did you say that, yes or no?
I believe you're reading my tweet.
Thank
There's
you.
a lot
the answer
more.
is yes.
You're quoting a podcast that provided
I'm
much
happy to have
more
a conversation with the chairman about whether I'm taking anything out of context. I don't think I am. And your answer is yes. Are you aware that your comments about proxy wars and Russia's legitimate security concerns, to quote your own words, are in alignment with what the Russians have said to justify their invasion of Ukraine? Yes or
Senator,
no?
I don't pay attention to Russian propaganda. My goal is to speak the truth,
the answer is
regardless.
no.
I believe that's in dispute, Tulsi.
That's fine. You said you are used to speaking truth to power.
Yes.
I'm shocked to hear you now say that, you know, you are agreeing. I'm not shocked because I know you said it. You are agreeing that you basically said that Putin was justified in rolling over the peaceful border of Ukraine, the first time since World War II that a free nation had been invaded by a totalitarian state, and you were there at 11:30.
No, I don't think that's true.
To say that you were with them, not us. And let me tell you something. You say you don't know because you don't read Russian propaganda. Russian state TV then aired your comments. Did you know that?
He's trying to say that the U.S. was justified. Like, we're not a totalitarian state.
Criticizing Putin for his invasion
What
of
I
Ukraine.
would say, Mr. Chairman, with the last, it's up to all of us. We're the Senate. We get to decide whether we're going to confirm this nominee.
I don't think I like Michael Bennett.
Nominee. But can't we do better than somebody who doesn't believe in 702? Can't we believe that somebody who can't answer whether Snowden was a traitor 5 times today, who made excuses for Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the first time that I'm aware of any American official has done that?
Hey, if you ask me if Snowden violated U.S. law,
at stake here.
I will truthfully answer yes.
I totally agree.
Do I believe he's a traitor? No, I believe he's a hero.
And you cannot answer most of what we
That's
do.
an easy question.
This is one of the very few opportunities that you will ever have to have a conversation with this panel in public. And the record is going to be very clear about the position you took with regard to Edward Snowden. And the record is going to be very
Now, do I agree with some of the positions Snowden has taken recently?
of the statements you made in the middle of the night.
It doesn't mean I don't appreciate what he did.
Invading the free country of Ukraine. And
Senator
I hope
Bennett,
we will
your
take
time.
that in
For those who, if you might not be aware, he exposed the illegal wiretapping program.
I will note that during Senator Bennett's question and answer, there was.
Is he in Russia or is he in?
The first sounded like a cell phone. I would ask everyone on both sides of the dais, if you have not silenced or turned off your cell phone, please do so now. The second disturbance was the cries of a small child. We will welcome such disturbances because the cries of an infant are the sound of answered prayers. Senator Rounds.
What?
Not only here, but the answered prayers in church when they cry as well, Mr. Chairman. First of all,
I thought it was in like Malaysia or one of those other countries that doesn't extradite.
I think part of the discussion here, as you can see, we feel very, very strongly about FISA 702. We work with it literally every day. As you can
This is
also
Mr.
tell,
Fudge
there's
Rounds.
very, very strong feelings here with regard to the actions of Edward Snowden. I want to come back, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to make any corrections or to make any other comments with regard to both of those issues that have been brought up here. But before I get into that, I want to go back into a little bit of your previous history as well. You did serve as Hawaii's, you served as a congressperson for what, 8 years?
Yes, Senator.
And during that time, you served on the Armed Services Committee. And during that time period, you did carry a TS-SCI clearance. You worked your way through that time period. You had an opportunity to look at a lot of information. Can you share just a little bit about the way that you've looked at that, not just as a member of the congressional delegation from Hawaii, but also
We're going to go back to Kash Patel, but I've got to hit the content
serving
warning.
up through and including.
I've been told that showing this man's face always requires a content warning on this stream. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ted
the
Cruz.
Biden White House. Now, you have been charged.
Ladies and gentlemen, non-binary folk.
The FBI. That is not going to be an easy task. But before you can carry out that task, and I am confident you will be confirmed and you will be in the position.
Cancel Justin.
Task. You've got to make it through the gauntlet of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And my colleagues on the Democrat side of the aisle, who I don't know how many spots on Senator Tillis's bingo card have been filled, but it looks like he's playing blackout and they're all filled right now.
Wait, he's got conspiracy bingo?
But you will be and have been accused of just about everything they can. But I want to focus on what several Democrats have done recently, which is trying to blame you for the violence that occurred on January 6th. Which even
anybody
in
blamed
the annals
him
of ridiculous attacks, this one really takes.
Oh, yeah. The White House has declared that we're all ladies. You are whatever gender you were at conception.
What role did you occupy in the days immediately before January 6th?
Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense.
We're all women
You were
now.
the Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense.
Yes, sir.
So to be clear, you were not rioting at the Capitol.
No, sir.
Where were you physically on January 6th?
In the office of the Secretary of Defense in the Pentagon.
And what were you doing on that day?
On that day specifically, responding to preparing to mobilize and deploy the National Guard once we got the lawful request from the local governing authority, which was the mayor of D.C. and the Speaker of the House.
Now, how many days in advance were you working to prepare the Department of Defense to help secure the Capitol on January 6th?
Days in advance, Senator, we were in the Oval Office on an unrelated national security matter with the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and myself. And the President authorized up to 20,000 plus National Guardsmen and women to secure any security measures necessary related to the Capitol. So we were moving to the fullest extent of the law before the requisite request came from a local governing authority days ahead of time.
And while you were Chief of Staff at DOD, how many times did DOD approach Capitol Police and ask if they needed National Guard assistance?
I believe those letters are well documented, numerous instances, and in numerous of those instances, those requests were shut down.
Now, am I correct that the Capitol Sergeant at Arms said assistance was unnecessary?
That's correct, Senator.
Who did the Sergeant at Arms report to?
The Speaker of the House.
That would have been Nancy Pelosi at the time. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
And would that also be Chuck Schumer, then the Senate Majority Leader?
The Sergeant at Arms, yes, Senator, reports up there.
Did Mayor Bowser, the Democrat elected mayor in D.C., either request or allow National Guard assistance?
She put in writing on the days leading up to January 6th a declination for National Guard additional support. And that letter is available publicly to the world.
So, and just to speak English for folks at home, a declination meant she said no, don't send National Guard. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a simple question, because from the questioning from my Democrat colleagues, they might think otherwise. Do you condemn violence against law enforcement?
All of it.
And by the way, is that true whether the violence is right-wing or left-wing or anywhere else?
There is no discriminating between types of violence against law enforcement.
And do you believe those who assault
there
violence against law enforcement should be prosecuted and should be sent to jail?
Especially those that kill them.
Let me ask you, how many years have you worked in public service?
About 16, Senator.
And how many years have you worked in particular in law enforcement and prosecution and national security?
Over a decade, Senator.
You know, I have to say it is ludicrous but sadly predictable that Democrats are endeavoring to tarnish you, to paint a false caricature based on innuendo and smoke. And so you're working to protect the Capitol on January 6th, and yet they're trying to blame you for the violence that occurred. Let me ask you this just as a straightforward matter. What is the job of the FBI, and what will the FBI's role be if and when you are confirmed as its director?
The simple motto on the website of the FBI's homepage is to protect American citizens and uphold the Constitution. If I'm
Good morning.
the next director of the FBI, that's what we're going to do, and redirect resources to making sure that occurs.
You and I, it's morning for a couple more minutes.
Thank you for your willingness to do so. And this committee will hold you to account on restoring integrity at the FBI. And I thank you also for your commitment to transparency. I think that is incredibly important to bringing back integrity, and I'm grateful for it.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, as part of my responsibility as a member of this committee, I asked the following two initial questions of all nominees before any of my committees. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator, I have not.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator, I have not.
Mr. Patel, you have been a champion of the January 6th prison choir. You have stated that the choir's members were, quote, incarcerated as a result of their involvement in the January 6, 2021 protest for election integrity, end quote. And one of the choir members is Julian Cater, who pled guilty. He pled guilty to assaulting officers with a deadly weapon. On January 6th, he attacked Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick with pepper spray, and the next day, Officer Sicknick
It got testy when we were watching it earlier.
And died. Mr. Patel, was Mr. Cater protesting for election integrity? Yes or no?
I don't know who that is.
I'm not asking you who that is. I'm asking you whether, having heard the description of what he pled to, whether he was protesting for election integrity, yes or no?
I don't know who that is.
That is not
statement-
responsive to my question. You're not willing to say that, but you were willing to describe this choir as consisting of people who were protesting for election integrity, and yet you testify you don't know them. We have heard already your book includes a list of 60
Froggy, good
people
morning.
who you think make up part of the executive branch deep state. Mr. Patel, if confirmed, do you plan to investigate President Trump's former FBI Director Christopher Wray? Yes or no?
I have no plans in going backwards. I have plans in safeguarding.
How about
this-
James Comey? Do you plan to investigate him?
Senator, every investigation will be subject to the same
Do you
legal
plan to
standard.
investigate James Comey, who's on your list?
I have no intentions of going backwards.
How about
and
Bill
every
Barr?
intention of using the Constitution.
How about Bill Barr? Do you plan to investigate him, who's on your executive branch deep state, and you say you're going to ferret out the deep state?
No one
Yes or
that
no?
did not break the law will be investigated.
No answers to any of
Senator
those.
Mazi Hirono of Hawaii.
Over 1 million Americans died
Holiday,
as
good
a result
morning.
of COVID-19. The COVID-19 vaccine saved lives. Yet, less than a year ago, you promoted unregulated,
Rocky, my friend, I think I've told you this before.
To
They absolutely did hearings for Biden's cabinet pick.
social. You told your followers that these supplements would detox them of the COVID-19.
Good afternoon to my friends
Mr.
on
Patel, did you
the
make money by
East
promoting
Coast.
these supplements?
Senator, do you know of any individuals who died as a result of complications from the vaccine? Because I do.
Are you unable to answer my question, which is a straightforward? Did you make money by promoting these supplements?
All of my financial disclosures have been made to this committee.
I would like to hear your answer, yes or no. Did you make money
I don't have
This
those
is my
financial
third and last time I'm going to
disclosures
ask you
in front
that
of me.
question.
You have that information.
So you refuse to answer the question.
I answered 1,300 pages.
You no answer, and yet you spread dangerous misinformation. Mr. Patel, the FBI is the primary agency responsible for investigating election-related crimes, including fraud and the denial of voting rights. So being able to separate fact from conspiracy theories around elections is an important thing for the FBI director. I have a question to see if you can do that. Mr. Patel, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 presidential election?
Yeah,
Yes
answer.
or no?
President Biden's election was certified. He was sworn in, and he served as the president of the United States.
Wow.
The people who are 100% loyal to President Trump cannot answer that question. It is alarming that you want to be an FBI director who can't answer a simple question, factual question. During a 2023 interview with Steve Bannon, you said, quote, "We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about the American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections." There's your quote. Do you still plan to come after the free press?
Come on, man. Not unless private citizens have been defamed. That's their right.
You said that you would be going after the media. So I want to know whether you plan to do that. Go after the free media.
I can't go after the media for other people. That's a decision they have.
So I would say that that was a statement that you made that is pretty chilling to the free media. So I didn't hear.
Come at me, bro. Come on.
You currently serve on the board of directors for the Trump Media Technology Group, which owns the social media platform Truth Social. If confirmed as FBI director, will you resign from this position?
Not Truth Social more. I used to post on my shit
all
on there.
ties with the Trump Media and Technology Group.
Yes, Senator, as I've stated to you in writing.
Over the last 2 years, the FBI has
Follow me on Truth Social at
resources to
JustinFREAKIN.
Operation Not Forgotten, which works to address violent crime in Indian country. If confirmed as FBI director, would you continue the important work of Operation Not Forgotten?
I've made that commitment to many of your colleagues who have tribal issues and tribal crimes plaguing their communities, and I'll make that commitment to you as well, Senator.
My time is almost up, but I would like to note that on the many questions asked about the choir, the J6 choir, it included at least 5 men who pled guilty to assaulting police officers.
Get some good music tonight. We're going to be watching the Fire Aid California benefit concert. That'll be Twitch only.
Promotes. Thank you.
Twitch or Kick.
Senator Kennedy
Be on
next,
Kick too.
And then, as directed by the chairman, we will take a 30-minute recess at the conclusion of Senator Kennedy's questioning.
Oh, God.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say for the record that Chairman Grassley is the greatest chairman God ever put breath in. And would somebody please tell Grassley I said that?
I think he has a crush.
You've made a lot of people mad, haven't you, Mr. Patel?
Seems so, Senator.
You think maybe you've made the right people mad?
As my FBI agents, the BRIC agents told me when I was running cases with them across this country and around the world, if you're not ticking off some people, you're not doing your job right.
My colleague and friend Senator Durbin called you a conspiracy theorist. You remember that?
I do, Senator.
You were instrumental in revealing that the Trump-Russia election collusion hoax was a hoax, weren't you?
Yes, sir. I was a lead investigator.
How was it a hoax?
sounds to me like we need to get some new conspiracy theories because all the old ones turned out to be true.
What?
Senator.
Yeah. I mean, conspiracy theorists are up something like 37-0.
No. That's a conspiracy theory.
You're not saying that everybody at the FBI is bad, are you?
Never said that. I've overwhelmingly said multiple times that 98% of the FBI is courageous, apolitical warriors of justice. They just need better leadership, especially those who participated in these conspiracies that actually turned out to degrade them.
Who put away the Unabomber?
The FBI.
Who put away Timothy McVeigh and his Stalin's stomach for blood?
What? The FBI.
Who helped investigate Jussie Smollett, who, in an effort of self-aggrandizement, set back the fight for minority rights for years?
I think that was local authorities.
It was the FBI that opened an investigation, wasn't it?
Eventually, yes, Senator.
Into the cops.
There have been a...
Whoa, ho, ho. That's... Whoa.
Department, which work hand in glove, weren't there?
Unfortunately, yes, Senator.
Secretary Clinton's lawyer, gentleman by
He
the
just
name
wanted to
of
say
Michael
Jussie Smollett.
had a pass to come and go at the FBI building as he wished. Don't you think the American people have a right to know about the details of that?
Not just that, but what a political party was doing with the secure compartmented information facility with direct access to the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Mr. Hunter Biden cheated on his income taxes. Didn't pay $1.4 million in income taxes over 4 years. And he filed fraudulent returns. He tried to deduct his hookers as a business expense, for God's sakes. And they hit him with 2 misdemeanors before there was a public outcry. Don't you think the American people are entitled to know the details of that?
Come on, man. The American people are entitled to a singular form of justice and the details to every.
He tried to write off his hookers.
Remember Peter Strzok?
I sure do.
Oh, my God.
Investigators for Mr. Mueller's Russian collusion hoax.
Yes, Senator.
This show's almost 10 years old at this
You remember
point.
when the Inspector General, not his colleagues, turned him in, Inspector General found that Mr. Peter Strzok said, quote, sent an email to his girlfriend, quote, just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support, end quote. Remember that?
Yep.
He did that while employed at the FBI while working on that investigation.
Do you remember when the IG revealed another email by Mr. Strzok to his girlfriend?
Smell him from a mile
Strzok
away.
said, quote, I am riled up. Trump is a fucking idiot. Is unable to provide a coherent answer. End
That's
of quote.
true.
Remember that?
Peter Strzok said that.
That's a true statement.
You remember when his girlfriend texted Mr. Strzok, quote, Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right?
I wish.
Mr. Strzok replied, no, he won't. We'll stop it.
I do remember their insurance policy.
And then Mr. Strzok testified in front of God and country that never had his political beliefs impacted his work.
Well, I assume he means we as voters.
When I was a kid.
You know, smart
You
people.
believe Jimmy Hoffa died of natural causes?
He's also not in the end zone of Giant Stadium.
And then Mr. Strzok got fired, and next thing we know, the FBI and the Department of Justice, after he sued, gave him $1.2 million. Don't you think the American people are entitled to know the details of that?
Absolutely.
Now, I
Was he
want you
sued?
to think hard before you answer my next question.
There's the political bias that he got fired, sued, and won.
Do you believe in the adage that 2 wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it
The
even?
manipulation of facts is just wild.
Senator, I think if anyone commits a wrong in government service, the American public deserve to know the absolute secular detail of that corrupt activity.
When reforming the FBI and the Justice Department, two wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even, is the wrong approach, isn't it?
That's correct.
And we're going to hold you accountable for that.
I hope you do.
Now, there's some good people at the FBI.
Lots.
And there have been and may still be some bad people there. And you've got to find out who the bad people are and get rid of them in accordance with due process and the rule of law. And then you've got to lift up the good people. Don't go over there and burn that place down. Go over there and make it better. Do you commit to us today that you will do that?
I commit to you, if confirmed, Senator, every single day, 24/7, 365, the FBI will be the premier law enforcement agency in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll now recess for a 30-minute lunch break. We'll return at approximately 12:40, and we will resume with Senator Booker's questions.
Senator Booker sucks. Let's go back to Tulsi Gabbard being questioned by Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona.
I assess that at the time the information, I don't know the second person you're referring to, but MIT professor Ted Postel and the inspectors of the OPCW provided some credible questions that deserved examination.
Yeah, you know me.
Did you attempt to weigh Postel's claims against the significant evidence and assessments already conducted by the IC?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. So here's my concern here, Colonel. When we began this, you described a thoughtful approach to analyzing intelligence and reaching conclusions. This is what we expect of our professionals. But we just kind of walked through how you came to question Assad's use of chemical weapons in these.
Kelly looks like a hairless
with a
cat.
different approach, and I don't reject seeking out differing viewpoints. We need to do that. But you started from a place of doubting the conclusions of the U.S. intelligence community, and then you sought out information that confirmed your viewpoint. That led you to embrace the opinions of two individuals that I think we disagree on this. You think they had expertise, I do not, and others do not.
Do you see
But
Maynard
these
right there?
individuals were sympathetic to Russia.
You can't hear it,
and
but
the
he is
Assad
yelling at that door.
It also led you to minimize or discount the overwhelmingly information that contradicted your viewpoint.
He really wants to go in
expert
there.
assessments of our own intelligence community, and they don't get it right 100% of the time. I get that. But what I have seen makes it clear that at the same time that you were skeptical of our intelligence community's assessments, you would not apply the same skepticism to information that came from sympathizers of Russia and Assad. And I think that's something that we should all be concerned about. Thank you, and I'm sorry for going over my time.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. I want to recognize and welcome to the committee our newest member, Senator Budd, although we all regret Senator Rubio's departure. We're all pleased, as evidenced by the 99-0 vote that he
Senator
is
Budd.
State, and that also pleased that we have a great new member on our committee, Senator Budd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm grateful for your leadership here as well. Colonel Gabbard, great to see you again. I enjoyed meeting you in my office a while back.
Let's flip back to the Health, Pensions, Yada Yada Committee.
So now in October of 2019, the
Senator
CDC
Jeff
declared a measles outbreak in Samoa. And in November, Samoa started a mass vaccination campaign to stop the outbreak. That same month, November of 2019, after 16 people had already died from the outbreak and Samoa was trying to respond to the crisis, you sent a letter to the Prime Minister of Samoa stating that, quote, "It is a regrettable possibility that these children are causalities of the vaccine." By unanimous consent, I will introduce that letter into the record.
Without objection.
So as Samoa was trying to contain the outbreak, you were saying that it was the fault
Like, I can't stress to you that like Maynard's being really annoying right
of
now.
vaccinations that caused the outbreak in Samoa in the same year you visited.
He's very loud.
I
reply
reply
to that, Senator?
Let me just finish. The death count in Samoa grew to 83, and Ultimately, volunteers in New Zealand sent tiny coffins to help bury the dozens of children who died.
Tiny coffins.
The Director General of Health later said,
It'd be a badass
with his
middle
last
band name.
and the status attached to it, people will believe him. People will believe Robert Kennedy. And a New Zealand vaccinologist later said the impact of your role was devastating. So your name and your profile helped fuel a measles outbreak. You scared people from taking a vaccine. It slowed the public health response, and children died. You've taken no responsibility thus far. And if an outbreak occurs in the United States, I have no evidence that you would not use your role as secretary to spread dangerous misinformation. So that one incident, from my perspective, disqualifies you from holding any position in healthcare, much less the number one.
It's one of those northeastern states. I can't remember which one it is.
And
It may be Massachusetts.
75 Nobel Prize winners in science have said very clearly
Let me look that
it
up.
should not be confirmed, that it would be dangerous for you to have.
And you
this
should look at their
job.
conflicts,
So,
you should look at their conflicts of those individuals.
Well, 75
and
Nobel.
you should look at who financed that letter.
75 Nobel Prize winners.
Well, I called him Jeff. It's Ed.
And by the way, of a high percentage of the medical community.
Yeah,
in
Massachusetts.
Boston, the health capital of the United States and the world, have said these.
He looks like a
things
Jeff.
about
Come
your
on.
Qualifications. They're saying to me they don't want tiny coffins as well. Neither do I. So that's the basis of my reservations about you, and the reason why I'm going to vote no on your candidacy, because I just think it's too dangerous to run the threat that that misinformation is spread in our country in the same way it was in Samoa.
Senator Murkowski, and let me compliment Mullen and Murkowski. They've stayed here the entire conference, and they're not obligated to like the two of us, not that we wouldn't have otherwise. But Senator Murkowski, you please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think these are exactly the types of forums that we all need to be engaged in from start to finish. Because
Can you speak up, Senator Murkowski?
there has been there's been considerable discussion here about many issues. Certainly a lot about vaccines. I care deeply about making sure that our vaccines are safe, the efficacy of them, the availability of them, how we disseminate them is particularly important in a very, very rural state like mine. You have experience there, you understand that. I am particularly attracted by the focus on chronic diseases. We know that if we can do a better job with chronic diseases, maybe some of the other things that we are susceptible to in the infectious diseases area, we're able to perhaps pull back a little bit on that. But our reality is, in order to make this country healthy again, it is a focus on everything. It is the prevention. It is the necessity of coming up with these life-saving vaccines that are going to be so critically important. It is personal care. It is food. It is exercise. It is all of the above. And we got to figure it out together. We do need to shake some things up, but we also need to give a level of confidence. And this is what I'm hearing from so many of my colleagues who have raised the issue of vaccines. We have made some considerable gains in my state of Alaska with vaccinating the many people in very rural areas where one disease outbreak can wipe out an entire village. We saw this in 1918 with the Spanish flu, and that's why everyone was rattled to the core. Villages were shut down entirely during COVID because of the fear of transmission. And so they're looking for these life-saving ways and means. And so when there is a lack of confidence, when there is a doubt, it's like, well, what do I do? And so we're pulling back then on, again, these areas where we can work to prevent some of these deadly diseases that we thought we had wiped out years ago. We have dramatically reduced diseases in my state like Hep A and B and meningitis. We're just now getting through a tough bout of whooping cough that came around to the state. Now there's a scare in the in the peninsula in Alaska about a measles outbreak. So we can't be going backwards with our vaccinations that will allow for this level of prevention and protection. So I'm asking you, you are clearly an influencer. You are clearly an influencer. You would not be in this position today. But you can see how your podium, your platform, your voice can influence so many. So I am asking you on the issue of vaccines specifically to please convey with a level of authority and science, but also with a level of conviction and free of conflict and free of political bias, that these are measures that we should be proud of as a country. Proud of as a country. Look to what President Trump was able to do with the COVID vaccine. It was extraordinary, and it did save lives. I need time for a question, so I'm asking you to focus on how you can use your position to provide for greater levels of confidence to the public when it comes to these life-saving areas. So I'm going to pivot to a question that you can answer. This relates...
I can answer that one, too.
I know, but I have 43 seconds, and no one has talked about our native populations. When you look at our health statistics, whether it's Alaska Natives or whether it is American Indians, our health statistics in this country, you know very well, because we talked about them, are not where they need to be. And it's in all categories. It's infectious disease, it's tuberculosis, it's Hep C, it's mental health, it's depression, it's substance use, it's sexually transmitted diseases, it's hypertension, stroke. It is so deep, and it is so challenging, and it is so hard. You have received support from Native American tribes. You have been in these areas. You have been quoted, and I'd like for your comment on this, as quoted saying, as far as budgeting for Indian country, you said you would immediately triple the budget to support tribes. Can you expand on this pledge and the commitment?
I couldn't tell who it was.
This is an area
from the
where
other
we
room.
have truly left our Native people behind when it comes to their health and their health outcomes.
Thank you, Senator. And this
yes, Murkowski is on the fence.
That is very important. It's always been a priority for me. I spent 20% of my career working on Native issues. I was one of the founding editors of Indian.
But they don't exactly need her.
Indian newspaper. My father and uncle.
You can afford to lose what, 2 votes, 3 votes, 3 votes.
Were deeply, deeply critical of the functioning of the Indian Health Service back in 1968 to 1980, and nothing's changed. Nothing's gotten better. I'm going to bring in a Native at the Assistant Secretary level. I'd like to get him actually designated as a Assistant Secretary for the first time in American history. Make sure that all of the decisions that we make in our agency are conscious of their impacts on the First Nations. I've spent a lot of time in your state. It's my favorite place to go. I've been up with the Gwich'in, representing the Gwich'in people up in Arctic Village.
Gwich'in.
And been all over the state in the remote areas. I understand in Alaska the unique needs of Alaska because of remote health care, because some of these areas are not even accessible except for airplane. That they don't have ambulance services, that the federal government needs to pay attention to financing transportation, the unusual ways that are required there, and that we really need to focus on telemedicine and AI. Make sure that even in remote places in Alaska, that Native people can get high-quality health care, and we can do that today. And I look forward to working with you on those issues and others.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Murkowski sets the record for going over. Senator Also Brooks.
Sorry.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kennedy, I was struck by your comments during our meeting last week.
What?
I was struck by your comments in our meeting last week where you made it abundantly
she
clear
was just
to me
elected
that you intended
from
to
a
clean
northeastern
house
state
of the professional scientists at the National Institutes of Health which you know is headquartered in the state of Maryland, and employs thousands of hardworking Marylanders.
Apparently
I
Maryland.
believe in scientists. And I
Angela
believe in
also
doctors,
broke.
and I trust them over politicians without medical degrees. You talked about bad science and bad scientists, and in fact, you specifically said to me in response to my question,
just
that
one
you
election
intend to
last year.
replace the bad scientist with the good scientist. And so I want to ask you, in your opinion, what makes a scientist or a doctor qualified to serve at the National Institutes of Health?
A scientist who's devoted to empirical methodology, to evidence-based science, scientists who understand the importance of replication, the importance of publishing raw data and being open and transparent about it, the importance of publishing peer review. We have, NIH has overseen over the past several years the decline, the precipitous decline in American health. There's 91,000 people at HHS, and are you suggesting that some of them should not be held responsible for that decline? They were in charge of protecting our health.
Let me just insert here.
Let me just finish.
But let me just say
saying
this, because I only have 3 minutes left. I don't set the rules here, but I ask the questions. And the question is really whether you intend, as you said, to substitute essentially your judgment for the judgment of these professional scientists and doctors.
I'm not going to substitute my judgment for science. Of course, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do, listen, the New York Times just did an article last week talking about the fraud, the 20-year fraud, 800 fraudulent studies produced by NIH on amyloid plaques, and not allowing any other hypothesis about the cause of Alzheimer's
Well, how
to be
will you
explored.
decide, Mr. Kennedy, which scientists
The ones
are
who
bad
are-
scientists?
the ones
Are
who
they
are-
the
who
ones
are-
who disagree with you?
The ones who are corrupt, the ones who have been doing science like the amyloid plaque studies that were fraudulent.
Well,
we
these
should
doctors,
not.
let me ask you a question. Do you have a medical degree?
Do I know?
Okay, let me go to the next question. The Heritage Fund has compiled a watch list of federal employees to go after federal staff. Is there a watch list for federal staff at HHS?
Not that I know of.
Have you or has anyone in the administration developed a list of career scientists or federal staff that you would target for termination?
Not that I know of.
And let me just ask you another question. Now, your failed presidential campaign has been raising money to try and cover your debts. And you were questioned about this yesterday and failed to answer a question that Senator Warren asked you. And so I want to ask you again regarding these emails that you have sent to raise money. How much has your presidential campaign made fundraising off of this administration's complete disregard for the workforce at HHS?
Excuse me? I didn't hear the question. The last part.
How much money has your presidential campaign made off of fundraising, off of this administration's complete disregard for the workforce at HHS?
Zero.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record 2 emails from this week and the week before regarding fundraising that you are currently doing through your presidential campaign.
Without objection.
And finally, I want to ask you, I have a...
What'd they say?
You said you were on a show on February 26, 2021, an interview with Dr. Judy Mikovits, where you said the following, and I quote, "We should not be giving black people the same vaccine schedule that's given to whites because their immune system is better than ours."
What?
Please explain what you meant.
There's a series of studies, I think most of them by Poland, that show that the particular antigens that blacks have a much stronger reaction. There's differences in reaction to different products by different races.
So I have 17 seconds left. Let me just ask
The blacks react differently to medicine.
Would you say I should have received?
That,
What different vaccine schedule should I have received?
I mean, the Poland article suggests that blacks need fewer antigens than...
This is so dangerous.
So you get the same measles vaccine.
Mr. Kennedy, with all due respect, that is so dangerous. Your voice would be a voice that parents would listen to. That is so dangerous.
Nobody wants to listen to his voice.
Nomination because
Science.
your views are dangerous to our state and to our country.
I mean, do you think science is dangerous, Senator?
Race science, yeah.
Studies.
I yield.
Senator Collins, who would have been here the whole time, but she was in an Intel committee. So, Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Cassidy sighing over here. Collins,
first of all,
also probably skeptical of RFK.
I agree with you that there needs to be more focus on chronic diseases like diabetes, like Alzheimer's. But it concerns me when I read a quote from you that says, I'm going to say to NIH scientists, God bless you all. Thank you for your public service. We're going to give infectious diseases a break for about 8 years. Don't we need to do both? Don't
Yes, absolutely, Senator. The problem is there's been an imbalance. We've devoted all of these dollars to infectious disease and to drug development to make NIH an incubator for the pharmaceutical industry, and very little to chronic disease. But chronic disease is 92% of deaths in our country. It's 9 out of every $10 we spend on our budget. Why aren't we devoting at least equivalent studies to determining the etiology of our chronic disease? It just seems like common sense to me.
I would point out that in many cases it's Congress rather than HHS who sets the funding levels for various diseases.
But NIH decides.
Okay, let's cut away from this for just a little bit. Let's go to, this happened moments ago, about 30 minutes ago. Trump, Hegseth, J.D. Vance speaking at the White House.
Thank you very much.
This is about the plane crash.
I speak to you this morning in an hour of anguish for our nation. Just before 9 p.m. last night, an American Airlines regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 military service members over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C.
That's a weird-looking man.
Reagan National Airport. Both aircraft crashed instantly and were immediately submerged into the icy waters of the Potomac. Real tragedy. The massive search and rescue mission was underway throughout the night, leveraging every asset at our disposal, and I have to say the local, state, federal, military, including the United States.
Okay, this isn't any fun. Let's go ahead. We'll get Hegseth taking questions.
So quick, so fast. It was.
And again, I want to thank you for your leadership, Mr. President, and I appreciate the confidence you placed in me.
I believe first time speaking to the press is the Secretary of Defense.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary said about your leadership. From the moment we found out about this, we were in contact with the White House trying to determine exactly what happened. I would echo it as well. No excuses. We're going to get to the bottom of this.
We have some idiots in charge is what happened.
From the Defense Department, want to pass our condolences to the 64 souls and their families that were affected by this.
It's been around freezing overnight, Flash.
And certainly the 3 service members, the 3 soldiers.
So I think they all died in the crash. No worry
Staff
about
Sergeant
freezing.
And CW2, Chief Warrant Officer, on a routine annual retraining of night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission. The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on the regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. And I think the president is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating at the DOD and Army level. Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top-tier aviation assets inside the DOD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable. But I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DOD as well. We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you on it. Thank you very much.
JD, please.
JD.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I just want to reemphasize something the President said, and you've heard from the Secretary of Transportation and of Defense. There really was a whole of government response. We were all on the phone. We were all communicating yesterday, trying to get to the bottom of this immediately, but also try to communicate with the American people about what happened. Something the President said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring,
oh my God,
on one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring
projection
to Washington, D.C. is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control, and we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin.
Wow.
Policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power, you have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane.
Man.
That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have. Yeah. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, you mentioned at the top of the briefing that there were several Russian nationals on the flight.
Yes.
Will the U.S. government be willing to facilitate the transfer of their remains, considering the fact there is no direct air travel between the two countries?
We've already been in contact with Russia, and the answer is yes, we will.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse, even though President John Lorenzo has been mediating the conflict between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring peace and stability.
This happened about 20 minutes ago, Holiday.
Really bad right now.
Quesadilla, good morning.
Mr. President, if you have
afternoon.
any plan in the future to bring peace in the
Well, you're
Democratic
asking me a
Republic
question
of the
about
Congo.
Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem, I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it, but it is a very serious problem.
We don't even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think whether the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane, you think that's going to make a difference?
Does it comfort their families
They
to
are
hear you
a
blaming
group of
DEI
people that have lost their lives. If you
That
want
was
to list
Caitlin
the
Collins.
names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question.
But are you
I'm
blaming-
surprised coming from you.
Are you blaming air
Please.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for being here. Based on your analysis so far, do you have a sense of who is at fault, if it was the plane, the helicopter, air traffic control, and can you assure people that it is safe to fly in and out of D.C.?
Well, I've given you the analysis, and the analysis was it was based on vision.
It was DEI.
You had a lot of people that
That's the
saw what was
analysis.
happening. You had some people that knew what was happening. There was some warnings, but the warnings were given very, very late. You know, those warnings were given very late. It was almost as they were given. A few seconds later, there was the crash. It should have been brought up earlier. But the people in the helicopter should have seen where they were going. I can't imagine people with 20/20 vision not seeing what's happening up there. Again, they shouldn't have been at the same height. You're going in reverse directions or sideways directions. Obviously, you want to.
Behind the scenes, he's been like, "How did you not see the plane?"
You have planes going in the opposite. They're always lower. We're higher, or so if somehow there's a screw up, there's not going to be a tragedy. It'll be close, but there's never going to be a tragedy if you're at a different elevation.
Wow.
We're at the same elevation. And also, from the American Airlines Center, he's along the track that every plane is along. You say, what was a helicopter doing in that track? It's very sad. But visually, somebody should have been able to see and taken that helicopter out of play, and they should have been at a different height.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned the Russians that were on board that plane. What other nationalities were on board that passenger?
There were a couple of others. We're going to be announcing it in about an hour. We have some very specific information. We're calling the countries. We've spoken to most of them, but there were some other countries represented.
Mr. President, spoken to President Putin?
I have not, no.
Mr. President, on your executive
Not about this.
On your executive order, you've already issued an executive order you say will restore aviation safety.
Right.
This crash happened after that. Was the executive order successful, and what more needs to change to keep people safe?
Well,
was it successful?
3 days ago, and we're in the process of making those changes. This is something that should have been done a long time ago. Actually, my original order should have never been changed, and I think maybe you wouldn't have had this problem. Maybe. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. We see like everyday life that very often those diversity hires cause sometimes issues, as you just mentioned. So what plan do you have? Are we going to see some fire? Are you going to fire some of those diversity hires in the federal government? What's the plan do you have?
The new podcasters.
If we find that people aren't mentally competent, you see the language. The language is put out by them. And if you see that, I'm not going to bore you by reading it again, but these are not people that should be doing this particular job. They'd be very good for certain jobs, but not people that should be doing this particular job.
Mr. President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have. But they didn't build the systems properly. They spent a lot of money renovating a system, spending much more money than they would have spent if they bought a new system for air traffic controllers, meaning the computerized systems. There are certain companies that do a very good job. They didn't use those companies. They used companies that should not have been doing it. No, I think it's very important to understand that for
common sense is always just an appeal to their feelings.
Traffic controllers, they have to be at the highest level of genius.
Okay. Genius.
I want to ask you about the ice skaters in a moment because the U.S. ice skating community was affected. But first, if I can, the site
ice skaters
you read is real, but the implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's
Who said
website.
That, you?
No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety.
What I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration too. So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in and he changed it. And then when I came in 3 days ago, I signed a new order bringing it to the highest level of intelligence. Okay.
It was on the website.
Please. Quiet, quiet.
Welcome back to the. I'm sorry. You mentioned that a vision was probably the problem that was at issue in this crash. There's been some reports that one of the pilots in the helicopter may have been using night vision equipment. Was there any
I heard
indication?
that. We don't know. We're going to know that pretty soon. It may change your view plane if you do have the night vision. So it's very possible that could have happened. That would be maybe a reason why you wouldn't actually see as well as on a clear night. You can see sometimes better without it. Had a couple of more.
Mr. President, is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly?
Go to what?
Is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly as well?
Well, sure. We want fast confirmations. And the Democrats, as you know, are doing everything they can to delay them. They've taken too long. We're struggling to get very good people that everybody knows are going to be confirmed, but we're struggling.
Kash
to get
Patel.
Faster. We want them out faster. It's a good
Very good
question,
people.
We've been pushing Sean. Everyone knows Sean for a long time. He got many, many Democrat votes, but they want to take as long as they can. They ask questions like some of the questions that Peter would ask that were totally irrelevant and not very good questions, but they want to just keep it going. They want to keep it going as long as possible. I was very honored, actually, that you got so many Democrat votes. That was really good.
Alan Duffy, that's the Transportation Secretary.
When I try to meet with the families, and second question, is it your impression that military training that was done during that time?
The what?
The training that the helicopter was involved in. Is it anything you can tell us about
You
that?
don't know. These are the things that will come up with the investigation. You don't know, but the helicopter obviously was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a tragedy occurred. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I've got a question about the.
No, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've been critical of the current regulations, and you've called for big reforms at FAA. I'm curious, sir.
I made the reforms, actually.
What is
3 days ago, I made them.
Yes, sir. What is your message then to the American public in the weeks and months ahead? Should they feel hesitant to fly? And if you could clarify perhaps something that the Defense Secretary said when he said that this helicopter was on a continuity of government mission?
I don't know what that refers to, but they were practicing. They do that. They call it practicing, and they were, and that's something that should be done. It's only continuity.
Tonight we're going to be doing
very good people, and that has to be in continuity.
California benefit concert.
But it
It'll
was
be Twitch and
basically
kick only.
practice, and it was a practice that worked out very, very badly. Okay.
On his question, the first question, should people be hesitant to fly right now?
No, not at all. I've not hesitate to fly. This is something that
You fly on a private jet, you dipshit.
Like this has happened, and the collision is just something that we don't expect ever to happen again. We are going to have.
He's not afraid to
the
fly.
highest level people we've already hired. Some of the people that you've already hired for that position, long before we knew about this. I mean, long before. From the time I came in, we started going out and getting the best people because I said it's not appropriate what they're doing. I think it's a tremendous mistake. You know, they like to do things and they like to take them too far, and this is sometimes what ends up happening. Now, with that, I'm not blaming the controller. I'm saying there are things that you could question, like the height of the helicopter and the height of the plane being at the same level and going in opposite directions. It's not a positive. But no, we're already hiring people. No, flying is very safe. We have the safest flying anywhere in the world, and we'll keep it that way. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
So yeah, that happened about 20-30 minutes ago. That was the Trump press conference on the plane crash. The Tulsi Gabbard confirmation hearing has moved to the closed session where they get to ask her about classified information. Bernie Sanders.
We have massive amounts of chronic disease. We have not
going
answered
after
the question why
RFK
in the richest
Jr.
country in the history of the world, our life expectancy is lower than it is in countries far poorer than we are. So I think
Julie, good morning or afternoon.
And Mr. Kennedy have asked some of the right questions. Problem is their answers will only make a bad situation worse. So let me ask Mr. Kennedy again. If we want to make America healthy, will you assure the American people that you will fight to do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee health care to every single American?
There you go, Bernie.
I'm going to make America healthier than other countries in the world right now.
Will you guarantee do what every other major country does? That's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh,
and protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would go. No.
Nah.
President like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
because I had
receiver of pharmaceutical money.
Contributions from workers all over this country. Workers,
you were the single,
not a nickel from corporate
Bernie,
PACs.
you were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in
1.5 million.
I don't believe it.
200 million. All right, but you have not answered. Last question. You have not answered my question.
Mr. Chairman, we're 3 minutes.
How do
We're-
we make
America healthy if you don't guarantee health
Chairman,
care
we're
to all
literally
people?
3 minutes over here now.
Well, so are other
how long
people.
does it keep going? At some time, you're just battering the witness, Bernie.
Not battering the witnesses. I'm
Yes,
trying
you
to get
are.
an
And
answer.
you're getting upset at him. You're going at him just like anybody else would.
Bernie's going over.
Fuck you, Mullen.
Before I ever entered politics, before I was ever thinking about running for office, I practiced medicine for 30 years. I worked in public hospitals in California, Louisiana, specializing in liver disease, caring for those who otherwise would not have had a specialist. If you will, dedicating my life to saving lives. That is, being a doctor. That ethic guides me now.
Oh, fuck you, Cassidy.
I told the story of my patient,
Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana.
Liver failure from hepatitis B being air ambulanced to LSU Shreveport Hospital for a liver transplant. Now, let me finish the story.
Yeah, I got it right.
Her mother wasn't allowed to fly in the helicopter.
Almost called him Jeff,
her mother
too.
drove the 3 hours from Baton Rouge to Shreveport. Now, when she arrived, they let her visit her daughter before she went back to the OR. And the mom goes in to say a prayer, squeezes the daughter's hand. The daughter's eyes open.
To be fair, Flash, you don't know, like Bernie might, be friendly with him, be like, oh, please call me Bernie.
Powerful story. Powerful story with a happy ending. But as a doctor, I saw...
who are you asking about,
endings
Julie?
not so-
Cassidy? No, he's a
I
Republican.
just had a friend text me
Let's go back to, this is the Kash Patel hearing, which is resumed. This is...
plane and who helped him build this international
We're talking about Epstein. This is Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee.
Now, earlier, I urged then Chairman Durbin to subpoena those records, and I ended up being blocked by Senator Durbin and Christopher Wray. They stonewalled on this, and I know that breaking up these trafficking rings is important to President Trump. So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past and how we are going to countermand missing children and exploited children going forward.
Thank you for that. I do want to touch on the political persecution. I find it so interesting that they feel like you would carry out political persecution. Your parents are with us today. They fled Uganda and persecution from Idi Amin. And I think that with your background and given your family's history, that you would never move to political persecution. Is that accurate?
Yes, Senator, that is.
And we appreciate that you would remove any kind of 2 tiers of justice from the FBI, because they have practiced that every day for years. Not all FBI agents. There are some good ones, and we certainly want to keep them, but the politics.
Oh yeah, there's some good cops.
Moved out of the agency. Now, they've tried to frame you as being anti-police. We've discussed that some today. And I know that you grew up working with NYPD officers in your community. And I know that law enforcement groups, including the National Association of Police Organizations, have endorsed your nomination. And on top of that, your brother is a law enforcement officer. Is that accurate?
Many of my family are, yes, Senator.
How many of your family, sir?
Well, I guess the Indians have a different definition of family. We got a really big one, and they're all family.
We all love big families.
So we got a lot.
I appreciate that. But it is accurate to say that in your role, you're going to do
Kash Patel was a lawyer,
everything
yeah.
you can to protect the
Is a
men
lawyer.
and women who are protecting our communities.
That is of the utmost importance.
Thank you. I want to go to the Nunes memo.
Blackburn was like a
The Nunes memo. Is that accurate?
Yes, me and staff.
Thank you.
I don't know, some kind of a consultant for like
Did really so
beauty
much
tips or something,
to focus the
like a
light on the
PR firm.
Russiagate hoax and the political cabal that was for years operated out of the DOJ and the FBI. And I know that
Well, yeah, but
there are
names
some
aren't necessarily like familiar in India, right? Like Patel is a caste.
now differently.
Like that's like a lower rung of society.
Comment that was made about that memo. And
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with like, you
of
know,
that House Intel
family.
Committee, and I quote,
Not a
it was
blood
meant
thing.
only to give Republican House members a distorted view of the FBI, end quote. I find it so interesting. They use the term distorted view. I think the American people who for 4 years under Biden saw the FBI weaponized against them, against parents, against people of faith, weaponized against President Trump. I think they would disagree.
I would have thought it was
with
higher
that.
actually.
Do you stand by the good work that you did on the Nunes memo?
Our team, and yes, absolutely.
And the Nunes memo was accurate in its description of the details, correct?
As confirmed by the Inspector General, the Special Counsel, because the Nunes memo only contained sworn information received pursuant to transcribed interviews and production of government materials.
I don't
including
remember this
FBI
Nunes
302s and
memo.
DOJ memorandum.
So the Nunes memo is accurate.
Okay, here apparently all the Democratic senators yielded their time to Bernie or some shit.
That when 68,000 Americans die because they can't afford to go to a doctor, you got to deal with that.
So we're back to the health committee, the health
One
pensions
word about
budget
the
committee.
need for universal health care that exists in every country on earth. When 1 out of 4 people can't afford prescription drugs because the pharmaceutical industry is ripping us off and charging us 10 times more in some cases than the people in other countries. I have not heard the definitive answer I need that we're not going to pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And one of the points I think that Mr. Kennedy made, which is right, healthcare is not just medical care. It's a lot more. Talk about the food industry. We have held a hearing, Senator Cassidy and I held a hearing a couple of months ago, where we made the point that the food industry is in fact poisoning our kids with addictive food that is leading to obesity, diabetes, heart conditions, etc. And I hope that our Congress and the White House will have the courage to take on a very powerful food industry and demand that the products that they sell our kids are in fact healthy and non-addictive. In many ways, what the food industry is doing today is what the tobacco industry did 50 or 60 years ago. And we talk about making America healthy today. Again, it's not just doctor care, medical care. We have millions of people working for starvation wages. You cannot be healthy if you're working 50 or 60 hours a week and you can't afford the rent that your landlord is charging you. Stress kills. Stress makes us sick. So, Mr. Chairman, let me just say this. I think the issues that have been raised in this hearing today are of enormous importance. I look forward to working with you and other members of this committee to make sure that we develop the policies that have the courage to take on very powerful and wealthy special interests. So, in fact, that we can make America healthy. Thank you.
This concludes
Thank you,
our
Bernie.
hearing. For any senators who wish to ask additional questions, questions for the record will be due tomorrow on Friday, January 31st at 5 p.m.
That wraps it up for the questioning of RFK.
Logs with me publicly or privately. During the November 30th, 2023
Ranking Member Dick Durbin.
subpoena authorization markup, I tried to recognize her.
Good afternoon, DJ Dub. I'm getting ready to wrap up. We're going to be back tonight for
business went forward on the Republican side. Many Epstein records, including flight logs, have been public for years.
the benefit concert in California. I'm going to try to come on a little bit early if I can. We'll get some news in before the concert. It starts at 9 Eastern.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond to Chairman Durbin. I had raised the issue with Chairman Durbin. I had raised it on the floor that we wanted to get these records.
The Epstein records.
During that hearing that you're recognizing, sir, or that you're mentioning, I sought recognition. It was not my Republican colleagues that ended that hearing. Mr. Chairman, you had the gavel, and you were the chairman, and you sought not to recognize me, and I know, and you know, and so many
Not one question about Holiday.
that you and Christopher Wray did not want those out. And I know we need to move on for questions, but Mr. Chairman, we have fought this issue for quite some time. I look forward to having an FBI that will work to help get these records and end this human and sex trafficking in this country.
15 seconds.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
The senator from
Yeah, I'm going to be back
Tennessee knows
tonight.
that
We're going to try to come on around 7.
2-hour rule
If
takes
you're watching
the
on
gavel
Twitch,
out
you're
of
heading over to the
Chairman's
Majority Report,
being
because
executed.
that's probably where you're going anyway.
and being executed by your side of the aisle.
Okay. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Julie coming in here like promoting a show that's on at the same time as me.
Today, but there's been a lot
trying to steal my audience. I love Francesca, but come on now.
as it pertains to the federal budget.
Don't do anything I wouldn't do. However, that doesn't limit your options very much at all.
But